How did a student completely tank their own college application? The amount of students who glue rice to their applications to Rice University is too damn high. My favorite email I ever received was a reply to an admission where all the kids said was, "Hey, we made it!" I printed that out from my desk for sure. Graduate school admissions. Our application requires 4 separate essays. This student wrote all 4 as a long, drawn-out love letter to one of our faculty members. The faculty member wasn't taking new students into the lab and had never met or talked to the prospective student. The student had taken all of the info for her love letters from his website, in addition to providing a list of his publications, also from his website, that she had read. I walked away from reading her application with zero sense of who she was, but having learned a great deal about the faculty member. We had an applicant send in a book they wrote and published themselves. It was difficult for us to really read it because for some reason the book really stank. We just put it in their file and shut the door.
Like, stank as in literally smelled bad?
Yeah, it was awful. The book itself seemed fine, but the odor made it really difficult to read. I am a college soccer coach. I was at a college recruitment event. At these events, they hand out profile booklets. In the section of interesting facts, one of the players' bios had an ad for a car that he was selling. I know a college admissions person, and one time they told me that a student wrote down that they can distinguish bra cup sizes by a simple glance at a woman. They were not impressed. Whitewater farting. He meant whitewater rafting. Someone wrote a lovely and extensive essay on how they wanted to go to Vanderbilt for an application to American in DC. My high school counselor told us about a kid who did something similar. He sent his essays to the wrong schools, but when he realized what he had done, he sent them both photos of himself with his foot in his mouth, and they both accepted him. Honestly, you have nothing to lose at that point. You're definitely not getting in if you just leave it be, so why not just admit that you wrote 2 personalized letters that went in the wrong envelope each? Not everyone would go with the humorous angle, but it worked with this guy. My college proudly advertised that in my class we had an Oreo stacking champion. Never figured out who it was after 4 years. At a law school I was considering attending, the admissions people told the story of a woman who had sent a shoe in with her application, along with a note that said, "Now I have a foot in the door." I once had an applicant come through who put in that their preferred name was the Turtle on their college application. An applicant literally wrote something along the lines of, "Please don't accept me, I don't want to go to your school," in the addendum section of our application because his parents forced him to apply. Another time, an applicant submitted an essay composed of Japanese characters that when put through Google Translate turned out to be a loosely translated version of Cat in the Hat. One of ours wrote that they were a people person because they had multiple personalities. I wrote a 750-word admission essay describing the smell of baked potatoes. Maybe not what they had in mind, but I got accepted and I went on to attend that university. The worst CV I ever saw as part of an application to a graduate program was a barely intelligible, unformatted mess that included such bits of information as, "She likes to spend her free time reading and her favorite book is 50 Shade Grey. Why waste time say lot word when few word do trick?" I won't say how I know this person, but he answered an essay question asking what he'd do if he had $100 by explaining that he'd go to the local playground where homeless people congregated and host a mini Olympics where the homeless could compete for the 150 burgers he purchased with the money. The idea was to feed them, but also do a study in human behaviors. This was for John Hopkins, and I'm pretty sure they weren't pleased with his answer. And to answer some repeated questions, it's not that $100 was a lot of money. It was more that JH wanted to see how you'd spend a small amount of money for the greatest effect. Also, the burgers were that cheap because at the time, BK was having a special on Tuesdays. The essay went into all the pricing to demonstrate frugality. And no, this person did not get in. I'm sure the essay is on their wall of shame now. I'm not an admissions officer, but a couple of years ago, a girl sent in an application to my university in larger than normal packaging. Somebody in the admissions office decided it was suspicious looking and might be a bomb. A section of campus got shut down, and Bomb Squad got to use their fancy toys to figure out it was just a regular application that the girl had attached lights to so that her app would stand out.
But did she get accepted?
No, she bombed the interview. That they were dead. The mom was still in denial and sent out a ton of applications. When I was young, my grandfather often took me out hunting for peasants. He meant pheasants. And to be fair, this was a Princeton application, so for all we know he might have also hunted the poor. I heard this one from a rather unpleasant admissions officer there. Maybe she stole the story from somewhere to scare high school seniors everywhere.
Sounds like someone I had class with in high school who had wealthy lawyer parents. He called everybody peasants and ended up getting arrested for posting online about his plan to shoot up our school. He escaped severe legal punishments because of said wealthy lawyer parents.
When I applied to medical school, one of the application essays had a prompt that asked us what we'd do if we didn't get into medical school. I wrote that I'd go to law school and become a lawyer specializing in prosecuting medical malpractice. I ended up getting an interview and had a good laugh about it with one of the interviewers. I did not get into that medical school. Law school admissions. We had a woman apply multiple times, but there was clearly something not mentally right with her. Our essay topic was basically, why this law school? She started the essay, verbatim minus this name omission. Who am I? I am Jane Doe. I want to go to law school and marry lawyer. She also said that she wanted to go to law school to work for her boss, Donald Trump/Barack Obama. It was clearly a recycled essay and she had missed some of the updates. She switched out the names. She also wrote about how she cured cancer, discovered how to regenerate amputated limbs with stem cells, and reversed grey hair back to its original color. She'd also routinely sent handwritten addendums to her application with more of her accomplishments to be added to her file. Her letters of recommendation included one from her pastor that said she used to regularly attend his church, but she's no longer following the teachings of the church, so he can't recommend her for anything in good conscience. Then there was a letter from her therapist who said with a large amount of one-on-one assistance, she may be able to complete a law school level course, and the generic form letter responses you get when you write a letter to the president. She had a 132 LSAT score, the lowest I've ever seen, so we never actually had to consider her, but I was actually pretty nervous she'd show up eventually. Campus police knew who she was and got copies of all of her letters. I talked to another admissions counselor at a school across the country, and she was doing the same thing to their office as well. I should clarify that this is in no means meant to pick on someone with a mental illness. I only worked in admissions temporarily, and actually I now work in the mental health field. I know she's sick, and from the letter her therapist sent in, I think he really cares about her well-being, so I'm hoping she gets the help she needs and deserves. She said some off-the-wall things, and it was ridiculous to see it in the setting I saw it in. I think it would be highly unethical to allow someone like this into law school. The stress of law school can break some emotionally stable people, so it would be cruel to subject her to that stress. It would also be unethical to allow her to take on a mountain of debt with no chance of graduating or passing the bar. One of my high school teachers used to read a newsletter that highlighted these types of things. My favorite one was that for one of the essays, the applicant was asked, "Ask yourself a question and then answer it." And the student's response, "Do you play the tuba?" "No." And he got accepted.
Today I learned I worked too hard on my admissions essays.
You're telling me? Apparently you're in if you can make a good one-liner or demonstrate that your parents are wealthy. Also, are these a thing in the UK as well as the States? Because all of the universities I've attended or worked at in my life required no such personal touches. I feel compelled to tell this story, even though it's slightly off-topic. I intern in the admissions office at a decently prestigious private California university, and I overhear the counselors making decisions. They regularly shout stats across the office to get other people's input on whether or not to accept or deny applicants. There was one kid who was right on the edge of what we normally accept, the lower end of the spectrum. My boss shouted out his stats and got mixed responses. Then she said the infamous phrase I'll never forget. "But guys, I Zillowed his house. It's $4 million in Los Angeles." And they frickin' let him in. That was the determining factor for this kid's college career. I'll never forget sitting there in horror listening to them joke about his wealth. I have so little respect for college admissions, at least at my school, and the administration after hearing that. A high school classmate of mine was forced to apply in-state by his parents. He'd already been accepted out of state for early admissions. So naturally, he took his beautifully written essays, put them through Google Translate a couple of times, and then submitted the result. He got waitlisted. He'd already been accepted into his dream out-of-state school, and parents had agreed to pay for it if I recall correctly, so not really being a butthead there. Also, the in-state school is quite prestigious, I think top 30, so we were all mildly shocked and amused to hear that he had been waitlisted. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My wife was an admissions counselor for a small, well-known Bible college in downtown Chicago. She got a ton of crazy applications. Quite a few came from people proclaiming things like, "I'm the prophet Robert and I've been given a prophecy and written them down. I need this degree to get this added to the Bible." One particular time she was at work and it was towards the end of the day, so most had already gone home. Well, they had a walk-in prospective student come to the office and want to meet with an admissions counselor. My wife was the only one left for the day, so she went into a fairly small conference room to speak about any questions he might have about the school and how to go about the application process. This man was a middle-aged male who didn't look out of the ordinary. About 10 minutes into their meeting, he then started slowly going off the rails about his testimony, his life story, even though my wife never asked for it. He starts talking about how God had been giving him visions for years of things he needed to accomplish while on Earth. Apparently, a small Bible degree was one of the small list of things needed. My wife then sees through the window on the door behind the man a few public safety officers come in and speaking to the secretary. They then interrupt their meeting and escort the man off campus. Before he left a big pile of handwritten papers that were new books of the Bible that needed to be added. Apparently, he was on their red flag list because he'd done this many times before for about 20 years, including making extreme death threats to their counselors for not letting him into the school and had once even attacked a student employee. This is one of a long list of crazies that contact her. She has a folder of crazy emails that were too hilarious to delete from this earth. In short, many prophets coming in proclaiming to be on a mission from God to deliver new books of the Bible to my wife. I had a friend who responded to the question, "Tell us about yourself," by drawing himself using lines and dashes on the computer and labeling parts of his face. He was accepted. Every time this question comes up, there's always people complaining about kids who've something really petty for their hardship they overcame essay. But also, they complain when kids write those essays about how they've never really had a hardship to overcome. Yeah, that essay kind of screws over people who've had a decent life, as well as screwing people who've had a traumatic experience, and writing a whole thing about it would trigger PTSD. Also, screwing over people who've overcome a real hardship but want to keep their private life private. Honestly, it really shouldn't be a prompt. For their GPA, they put 95. One student listed their high school as I don't know. One student listed their intended major as teaching and their minor in principal. I asked one person how to spell their name, and they had to ask their mother how to spell it. Multiple people have actually tried listing their IQ as a reason for admittance. If you get to write your own personal essay, do not write "why" as the title of the essay, and the entire essay be "why not?" Maybe not too ridiculous, but those stuck with me. I'm sure that last person was super smug thinking their essay was genius. My brother applied to a religious private school, and one prompt was, "In what way has God encouraged you to pursue law?" And his answer was not applicable. He got in and used the scholarship to negotiate funding at the schools he wanted to go to. I got into a great university, and about a year later, a guy from my hometown messaged me asking if I could look over his application form. Now, I was over the moon because I was really proud of this guy for wanting to further himself, because I'd been worried he'd fall into our town's trap of poverty and dying young. Now, I'm not saying I rewrote his application, but if what he gave me was the alphabet, then I gave him back the entire damn works of Shakespeare. Some highlights include, when prompted to talk about what led him to seek out university qualifications, he answered something along the lines of, and this is grammatically exactly the same way he explained it, "My mate went and seemed like she had fun. I wanted to have fun but also get smarter." When asked to talk about any prior work experience or volunteering, he mentioned his time in McDonald's. It's not bad, still a job, but he didn't go into much depth besides that. He also said the time when he was younger and had to do community service for something. And when you get to the part of the application where it asks you why you want to attend that university, he literally said something along the lines of, "Oh, Google said it was good." Now, obviously, I couldn't rewrite it perfectly, because he'd get to the interview and they'd be able to tell somebody else had done all the work for him, but I tidied it up for him and gave him a pep talk for the interview, and clearly they saw that he was a great guy just looking to further himself, and he got in. At the part of the essay where they wrote, "What else would you like us to know?" I wrote about the birthday party I threw for my dog. At the end of that section I put, "If I were an admissions officer, I'd feel that this is relevant to the application." I was shockingly accepted. What? I mean, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with celebrating your poochie, but why did you put that? And you seem to have realized it was bonkers because you've answered this question with it. Here, I'm going to assume it was a tiny little extra short answer at the end after all of the actually relevant stuff. Well done anyway, I guess. About how she discovered her passion for science through a summer research internship where she studied microbiota swabbed from her butthole. My sister had to write an essay for a super Christian college she was applying to, and she wrote about the struggles she faced being atheist, and got accepted. That actually sounds legit. Most Christians are actually decent people who wouldn't think being an atheist disqualifies you from being in their school. A well-written essay on a topic like this ticks a lot of general college application boxes, like dealing with hardship or diversity and stuff, and would likely be well received in most places. I'm out of the business now, I got a real job, but I was the transfers guy in addition to regular freshmen, and there are two cases that stick with me. The first was a phone call. A mum called in telling us her daughter should be let in with a 2.4. I was candid with her and told her it wasn't going to happen. She was well below our requirement. The mum started weeping. I mean, real honest weeping. I tried to calm her down some and asked her what it was all about. Parents generally just get angry. They don't give you the reaction that this woman gave me. She tells me she just found out she has late-stage brain cancer and she doesn't have anywhere for her daughter. And she hasn't told her yet. She had about 3 months. So basically, just enough time to help her daughter move in for freshman move-in day. I had her send in some documents from her doctor and took it to the director, and he made a special exception. We also made sure the girl had housing. It felt good to make a difference. The second case was a transfer who had a cumulative GPA of 1.78. I went to snap the denial off on that one before I saw the case had a pile of transcripts that hadn't been viewed. I popped up his star military transcript, and it looked like he'd joined the Navy after flunking out of community college. There was boot camp, then buds within 3 months, then team lead, then pages and pages of blacked out lines. I made the argument to the director that the guy who had 10 pages of Spec Ops leadership was in no way in heck going to flunk a college class, and that his transcripts be ignored and that he was treated as a fresh applicant. The director agreed, and I got a call from Africa on a satellite phone the next day saying thank you. The guy showed up a couple of weeks later to thank me in person and shake my hand. I had a student apply for a master's program, but the student didn't have a college degree. When I applied to college, the essay question was something like, "What is your favorite place?" I said the bathroom and spent the whole essay talking about how I loved going number 2. Did they accept that load of crap? Yeah, they also gave me a scholarship. I'm a decent writer, so it probably wasn't a bad essay, just wasn't what they were looking for. My college counselor in high school used to be an admissions person at an Ivy. She showed us the best essay she'd ever read as an example of ours. The essay was the kid's first time trying alcohol. He was a straight-A student spending a summer in Spain with a host family. They woke him up to take tequila shots for a cultural festival, and he'd never drank before because grades were everything. His essay was about how he drank to be nice to his host family and realized there is way more to life than just school and tunnel vision. She said that almost every school he applied to contacted his high school to say it was the best one they'd ever read, and he got into 3 Ivy Leagues. Yeah, either he was lying or he was definitely an F in geography. We do not do tequila shots for cultural festivals in Spain. That would be Mexico, if any. In Spain, we have a plethora of regional alcoholic beverages, none of them is tequila, which is made with agave that doesn't grow naturally in Spain. I forced my best friend to apply to a college he wasn't super interested in where I was applying. There was a section of the application where you describe your hobbies and past experience. He wrote walking as his first one with 17 years of experience and gravity as his employer. He got in. I read through a large number of these before realizing that we don't do this process in Australia as far as I know. I applied to Sarah Lawrence with my Why Our College essay being about how I'd heard about them from the Princess Diaries books. I got accepted. I received an 8-page diatribe PhD application, of which page 5 contained the sentence, "But enough about myself," finally culminating in this paragraph. I have aspirations to allow my research to impact the world, helping to eradicate poverty, neglect, health conditions, and possibly even on a global scale, with this PhD being the start of my life's work. If I were to aim big, I'd like to think that I could go on to do amazing and wonderful things. I do not aspire for the accolades, but feel if I work hard enough, I could achieve literally anything. Even a Nobel Peace Prize could be on the cards if I were allowed to just give my best. My dream is to be able to travel the world and teach people the importance of understanding a community as a whole. Teach people how to put aside differences and grow as one united worldwide community, and of course, change the world for the better. I just need to have the opportunity to get it started. You skeptic, this project sounds promising. What is it about? Ideally, I'd like to keep the project open and not focused on one specific geographical area, but feel I could definitely focus a lot of my knowledge on slums and areas with real problems with poverty and highlight issues around elitism versus extreme poverty. I'd focus on politics, religion, education, materialism, consumerism, and cultural norms, with the attempts of showing how issues within these can stop a community fully flourishing. I really do feel that this project could turn into a physical project and move forward with my own aspirations. I think I could focus more on the slums if you feel like this is an area that the university will support. I would be more than willing to visit various areas that have slums and try to learn about the problems the people face and how they'd want it to change. This man just wanted to create a new blueprint for society. I wrote my essay about procrastinating and getting distracted. I got accepted. I mean, at least you submitted it. For a specialized master's program working with children. While I have little experience with children, I believe my life experiences can help teach them, including my stint in prison and a brief stay in the mental hospital.
What is the most inoffensive thing you've seen someone get offended by? My 7-month-old was wearing a shirt that had a rocket ship and the NASA logo, and some middle-aged woman in the shop said, "He shouldn't be wearing that because he's clearly not an astronaut." I was dumbfounded. I still remember in kindergarten when my friend and I were reading all the colors out loud on one of those Crayola super packs. I straight up got yelled at and sent to the principal's office for saying, quote, "orange pizzazz," because the teacher said I called someone a pea-butt, not censored, and would not listen despite having the crayon as evidence. After a 30-minute scolding and waiting for my mom to leave work to pick me up for my suspension, she came in all apologetic. When I explained to her the whole situation, not the school side, Ma went ape. I'd heard her say crap once. That's the only swear I ever heard from her, and we had just been rear-ended in traffic. How about yeah! Can he say yeah! Cause you're all being yeah! right now. This is ridiculous. And just went off while I'm sitting there all surprised and the principal is just red AF. I got unsuspended on the spot, but she pulled me out of school for the day anyway. We had a lovely day, and she explained very well how I shouldn't swear like that unless absolutely necessary and I've exhausted all civility. Quote, "When being civil simply isn't working, sometimes you might have to call someone a pea-butt." The next day at school, I learned that I now had the stigma of being the kid who got the Crayola Super Pack taken away. We were choosing a mascot for a summer camp where I worked. It was the first day of camp, and we'd always let the campers vote on a mascot that we'd use for the rest of the summer as a sort of bonding thing. This year, the kids voted for wolves as the mascot. It was almost unanimous. But one kid, probably about 9 or 10, threw a fit because wolves are, quote, bad guys and predators and killers, and he doesn't want to be a wolf, he wants to be a hero. He refused to participate in any team activities because he didn't want to be on a team with the, quote, bad guys. At one point, we brought in a guy in a full mascot wolf costume for some anti-bullying program, and the kid had a massive tantrum. I almost felt like we were going to learn at some point that his brother was killed by wolves or some other tragic origin story. I did feel bad for the boy because I was fairly certain he had some kind of unaddressed emotional difficulties or something, but we weren't going to change the mascot name that almost everyone voted for. The really sad thing is that wolf populations have suffered a lot due to stereotypes that they're bad. Friendly reminder to go watch The Bad Guys, a beautifully animated DreamWorks movie with a bumpin' soundtrack and a cast of characters that are incredibly fun to watch. Using a walking stick. I was in a car accident a few years ago and it screwed my leg up. Since then, I've been using a walking stick. I was walking to shop, pre-pandemic, and an old bloke gave me the dirtiest look I've ever seen. "What do you need a cane for? You're only a kid." He actually got quite mad just seeing me using a stick. Like, my dude, I'm just out trying to buy some milk. I don't need your crap today. I didn't say that out loud, I just said it to myself after I got home. Maybe 22 years ago, I had a phone interview with a baking company. I didn't care to have my peers know what I was up to, so I took the call on my cell phone in my car. The call was crystal clear and no technical issues. At one point, they had mentioned the weather and asked how it was where I was. I told him that I was sitting in my car and I could see that it was actively snowing and whatnot. The interviewer asked me, "Are you taking this call on a cell phone?" I told him I was. Then he asked me if I thought that was appropriate. I asked him what he meant by that. He said he thought it was kind of rude to take a formal call on a cell phone. I told him I would be more than happy to conclude the interview if talking on a cell phone was an issue. If he was interested, I'd be happy to continue it the next day when I'd be at a desk. He again repeated how rude he thought it was that I had called from a cell phone and that there was no need to continue the interview process. I disagreed with the first point, but did agree with the second. To this day, I wonder what the heck he was talking about and where he was coming from. One time, someone got offended when I put on my seatbelt, thought I was commenting on her ability to drive. We used an app on work called Bonfire. One person refused to use it because bonfires are for witchcraft and pagans. I spent 9 hours deep cleaning the house for an inspection. I went above and beyond, clearing my work schedule and going the extra mile, and my roommate, quote, double-checked my work. He had a complete psychotic meltdown because I forgot to sweep underneath the couch. I moved out the next day and never spoke to him again. I was at the vet with my cat and he sneezed. This was apparently very offensive to an elder woman. She was there with a corgi, and she started screaming at me for about 30 minutes about pet hygiene. At school, someone didn't have a calculator and asked if anyone had one they could borrow. Someone offered them a pink calculator and they refused, saying that they were offended they'd try and give them something girly. Fellas, is it gay to do math with a pink calculator? I once listened to my boss try to lecture the fire marshal because he was talking about something being flame retardant. Her reasoning was you should just call it fireproof because retardant was an awful word. It was one of those times where I really should have tried to stop her, but instead, I just stood off to the side, probably making a surprised Pikachu face. I got in trouble in kindergarten for saying the word dead. Apparently it was too violent.
Oh my god, have you not subscribed to Am I the Genius yet? That's literally so offensive. You should do it now and subscribe to Am I the Jerk too. So link in the description or whatever.
I had a coworker who got mad at me because I asked her not to tickle me. A, that's inappropriate at work. B, we're not children, we're not in a relationship, and we're not family. C, I don't like being tickled. She flipped out and said everyone likes being tickled and I was being mean to her. Happily, my boss had my back. Edit, this happened over a decade ago. I don't work with that woman or for that company. In fact, even the company doesn't exist anymore. I am also a woman. The coworker was very young and immature. This was her first job, her first time in a professional environment, and she really had no clue about professional workplace behavior. I wasn't upset because she truly thought she was being friendly. But I still don't like being tickled. When I was a child, my mom paid for something with a check. The cashier remarked that my mom had nice handwriting. My mom flew off the handle, and we had to storm out of the shop in outrage. To this day, I have no idea what happened. I'm a disabled person. My life sucks because of my disability, and no longer being able to do the things I used to love makes me quite depressed sometimes. Some jerkwad tried to lecture me about how I was ableist for wishing there was a cure for my disability. Screw me for not enjoying being in constant pain and possibly ending up in a wheelchair in the future, I guess. I worked at a restaurant, and we put up some Halloween decorations. We had to take them all down when someone found the glittery skull decoration offensive. My mom got mad because, and I quote, "She never asks me for money," referring to me. I'm sorry? Would you rather I constantly bug you for cash so I can buy candy and stuff? Back when I was in grade school, a teacher of mine was discussing something. I don't exactly remember the context, and he said God or a God in order to be neutral to those with various religious beliefs, and probably to cover his butt since he was commenting about religion while in school. And the girl in my class got so upset/offended about it, she started bawling about how he is being disrespectful to her beliefs. The Pixar short Lava. He walked out saying it was deeply offensive and didn't explain why. Gets offended. Refuses to elaborate. Leaves. Profit? Typing in someone's phone number to activate their rewards card. Finished typing it in, found her name, proceeded with the transaction, and said, "You're good to go." The woman replied with,
What is that supposed to mean?
and she gave me a fiery glare as if I just kicked her toddler across the store. It means, I found your information. You'll get your points. Oh, okay then. I still can't figure out why she flipped out like that. It was a rewards card. She got her points and she got her discount. What? The only possible way I can imagine getting offended by this is from never having heard that phrase before and assuming it meant I would like you to leave. But even then, that is quite an assumption. Race tangent. I called someone fam and she blew up at me saying that I clearly meant the N-word. Had someone get offended by me calling my brother bro. They insisted that I was racist and that white people can't be related to Mexicans. Like, seriously, lady, that's not how genetics work. We are 100% related and are a mix of white and Native American. It's not that unheard of for one biological sibling to come out lighter or darker than the other. And even if we weren't related, seriously? I'm racist for calling someone close to me my bro despite being different skin tones? Seriously. Thank you for coming to my rant session. Have a good day. Someone once got offended because I used the word black in conversation. I was talking about an article of clothing / the color black. They tried to make it into something about race and that I shouldn't use the term black anymore and should say African American. I said that makes no sense. I'm literally talking about the color black. Am I supposed to say I'm wearing an African American colored shirt? Maybe I'm crazy, but I think that's actually offensive. This has been a race tangent. The Canadian flag told me that if they put up a Canadian flag in Pennsylvania, the neighbors would come and shoot everybody. Not quite sure about the logic on that one. This guy at a Halloween party I was at was dressed in a giant bacon costume. Some girl was yelling at him for being so offensive towards Jews and Muslims. She was neither Jewish nor Muslim. One of the Muslim guys at the party asked her what the heck she was talking about, but she didn't back down. I have no idea why people feel they need to go out of their way to be inaccurately offended on behalf of other people's cultures / religions. A picture of an eye. We have an organization-wide theme every year, and all the PCs on our network have the same background and theme, which can't be changed. So, this year's theme is Vision is 2020, and the background was a zoomed-in picture of an eye in really awesome colors. 2 women on staff wrote letters to complain that the picture was, quote, heathen, as it drew from, quote, Illuminati imagery and paid tribute to the, quote, all-seeing eye of Egyptian deities. They whined and complained to such an extent that the picture was eventually changed to shut them up and let the normal folks get back to our actual work. This. An article from BBC states, Professor Greg Patton at the University of Southern California, USC, was telling students in a communications lecture last month about filler or pause words such as or you know in Chinese. Footage of his lecture, which has now gone viral, shows Professor Patton saying, in China, the most common pause word is that. So in China, it might be ni, ge, ni, ge, ni, ge. Enunciated, ni, ge, sounds like the N-word, which led several of the professor's students to complain to the university. Responding to the complaint, the dean of the university, Jeffrey Garrett, told students that Professor Patton would no longer be teaching the course. Quote, "It is simply unacceptable for the faculty to use words in class that can marginalize, hurt, and harm the psychological safety of our students," he said. The university says that Professor Patton, quote, "volunteered to step away from his role amid the investigation into complaints made against him." This is the stupidest thing to get offended over that I've seen in quite a while, and damaging to actual cases of racist terminology being used inappropriately. This reminds me of the discussions people have had in class about books like Huckleberry Finn or To Kill a Mockingbird, where uses of the N-word have historical context. Nobody asked for my opinion, but here's what I think. Preserving history is instrumental in teaching ways to prevent it from happening again. We need to know what bad examples look like so we can set better ones. If we completely sanitize history and skip over it, it defeats the purpose of learning it. I told my sister in a private message that it's, quote, "first," spelled 1ST, not first, 1RST, after she posted something on Facebook with a spelling error. She flipped out, saying how I'm a, quote, "bully," and I need to, quote, "appreciate that her spelling is more unique." Edit, she's 27. I sang the song "Hit the Road, Jack" to a kid I just beat in a game while in the 3rd grade mockingly. He took that as me calling him a jackbutt. He told the recess monitor this. I was told to stand against a wall away from the rest of the kids with the recess monitor. I am now 27, married with 2 kids, but I will never forget this. If you ever see this, I didn't call you a jackbutt, Jared, but now, screw you forever! Got chewed out once for saying, "yes ma'am," to a lady. I'm in the South. That's what we do. Southerner here, I can explain this one. So when you refer to someone as ma'am, usually what that means is that they're either older than you or it's used as a term of respect. So if you're addressing one of your superiors, you'll usually say, "yes ma'am." As for the age of someone you're talking to, if they're only a few years older than you, they might take that as you thinking they're old. Which, I know, that sounds kind of stupid, but some people are really sensitive about their age. So tread with caution. A sandwich. I kid you not. My ex-husband was given a sandwich by our then 13-year-old daughter, and because she cut the sandwich, he went off on a massive strop about how his sandwiches should never be cut. The poor kid's face, she was crushed. It still winds me up to no end every time I think about it. I managed a small, new team that had no procedures or policies, so I set about instituting some. Quote, "I mean, you never know. I could get hit by a bus tomorrow and then no one would know how to process these requests," I told them, when asking for their feedback and for them to write up how they did their tasks. Then, we would come back together and decide best practices in a meeting. Little man filed a complaint to the manager for my use of, quote, "violent imagery" and said that he felt threatened. It was a whole thing. Ultimately, he got fired. Screw him, bye! Edit, well, this blew up. For clarity, he didn't get fired for this one incident. He was a horrible employee with real issues having a woman in charge. In French, we have a way to address for a man, monsieur, a married woman, madame, an unmarried woman, mademoiselle, and we used to have one for an unmarried man, mademoiselle, which disappeared from official paperwork since I don't even know when. In the name of gender equality, mademoiselle was also removed a few years ago from official paperwork. Also, in the name of gender equality, some employees were told not to call young women mademoiselle anymore and to go with madame. So the trick is, some women will get offended when called madame because it makes them feel old, and some women will get offended when called mademoiselle because it's sexist. Clerks are doomed. I'm a white South African. Born here, my nationality is South African. Some American girl got offended that I called myself South, quote, African as a white dude and said that only people of color can call themselves that. Brah, it's a nationality. The kid that got the cops called on him and suspended from school for having a Nerf gun in his room during a Zoom class. At my wedding, we marked the vegetarian items as vegetarian. This made the one vegetarian at my wedding, sister-in-law who hates me, fly into a catatonic rage because we are singling out the vegetarian food as vegetarian and not treating it as normal food. Then how the heck are they supposed to know it's vegetarian? I had a pastor that insisted we call candy canes, quote, Jesus sticks, because Christmas is all about Jesus, y'all. Ain't no fun to be had otherwise. Well, I was 7 and accidentally referred to the Holy Jesus stick as a candy cane in his presence. And I crap you not, he speed walked over to my dad to tell on me and carry on about how offensive it is to see all the world trying to remove Christ from Christmas. It starts in the home, den of sin without Jesus, something, dark side. My dad asked him if he was serious. Spoiler, he was very, very serious. And then told him to grow up. And that's how my dad dressed up as Santa a couple weeks later and came into the church yelling, "Ho, ho, ho, candy canes!" while passing said satanic candy canes to all the little children during the children's church portion of service. The pettiness runs deep, and it was delicious. When my ex and I were looking at houses, we brought his dad, let's call him Dave, to see houses we already liked. The real estate agent didn't spend enough time on telling Dave he was right that the bottom step was too tall, so later that night, I got to hear an hour-long lecture from Dave about how the agent was a piece of crap that was trying to take advantage of us. A large reason I'm single now is because my mental issues are too much to deal with, but Dave here is definitely a contributing factor as well. An AIDS walk happening in front of our restaurant. My boss said, well, they better not come in here spreading their disease. I was like, dude, that's really not how AIDS or their walks work. One Easter Sunday, a lady in church was wearing a hat that had the Easter bunny, chicks, and colored eggs as part of its design. The woman in the pew behind her took umbrage, telling the lady that Easter was about the resurrection of Jesus from the dead, not about, quote, silly rabbits, chicks, and eggs. This happened just last week. I work at a bank in an affluent part of Atlanta. Read Old White Money, and a woman called in to let us know she was offended by the security questions for her online banking. The security questions she herself set up. What was your mother's maiden name? That's none of your business! My dad loves to tell the story of how, shortly after they were married, he and mom went to get some fast food. As they pulled up to the drive-thru window, my very conservative mom saw a sign that said, condiments available upon request, and said, oh my god, that's disgusting. Why would a restaurant feel the need to give those out? She had misread it and thought they were giving out condoms upon request. One of my coworkers was surprised and said, oh my god. A religious coworker overheard her using God's name in vain and reported it to HR. They had to have meetings with HR and the managers about respecting people's religion. The lady said, oh my god, she didn't wish for the death of Christianity. It was ridiculous. Yeah, fun fact about that oh my god thing people love to get their panties in a twist about. The whole reason you shouldn't use the Lord's name in vain is so you can't murder people and say that God told you to do it. Abraham and Isaac is the prime example of this. God literally had to intervene and be like, hey, yo, Abraham, chill out. I didn't say you could do that. Reddit, what's something your family doesn't know about you? I just get in my car and drive. I never really have a destination. I just need to leave. I've done it ever since I had access to cars. My mom will ask why I have a sleeping bag in my car, and I'll just lie because I don't want the hassle. Edit, I know this is a do what I say and not what I do situation, but if you do this or want to do this, please tell someone. Stay in some sort of contact. I don't like cheese. Seriously, Mom, you have the memory of a goldfish. I'm 18 and I bought my first scratch off and won $10,000. I put it in savings and parents don't know I have it. The week after graduation from high school, I tried to hang myself in the basement, but the rope broke. I wasn't going to college, and I didn't see a bright future ahead. That was 5 years ago as of this past Friday. Right now, the world seems very dark still, but I'm trying hard, and I'm fighting every day to keep moving forward. I'm studying graphic design every day, haven't touched games for months, yet they think I'm playing video games when I'm working on my computer. Dad, I'm not actually that incompetent. You breathing down my neck when I'm cooking/driving freaks me out. Also, I haven't been a virgin for years. Where I live, what my phone number is, or whether I am even alive. I'm actually so sad there's no story for this, but I imagine some serious crap must have went down in order for that to happen. That I'm infertile. They are waiting for babies, but they won't be coming. Hey, same here, guy. But I told my parents almost immediately, and they were very supportive. Tough break. Good luck on your journey, and hope you have someone you can talk to. Feel free to vent if you ever need to. I got suspended from school because I used to skip lessons all the time. Weirdest punishment ever. My mom knew and didn't want to tell my dad as she knew he'd be disappointed, so she told me to work hard and get back on track. My dad left for work earlier than I went to school and got home after school finished, so I would just lie and pretend I was at school all day. I'm nearly 30 now and he still doesn't know. I faked a job offer so I could move to another city that is 3,000 miles from them. The reason I faked the job offer is because I still want to maintain a relationship with my family regardless of how controlling and oppressive they are. I got an actual interview, did everything, but was not chosen. Instead of telling them that, I made fake contracts, an offer letter, and I showed it to them. Since the documents are in English and my parents can't understand, they just ask me questions and things, so lying is much easier. I just pack my suitcase, live off couch surfing, work a temp job for money and food for a while. It's hard, very tiring and financially unstable at first, but now I have a job, peace, and much more confidence in voicing my opinions and feelings. I am also slowly mending my relationship with my parents. Soon. That I'm a retired multimillionaire at 39 years old. They just think I'm a freelancer who travels a lot. It's for the best, I think. I hate my sister. She is self-absorbed and attention-seeking. She starts conflicts and is proud for standing up for herself. Girl, you wouldn't be in that situation if you didn't start it. She's always the victim. My parents' sister and brother walked on eggshells around her just so she wouldn't flip out. I did for the longest time until I got tired of her. I was labeled the jerk for setting her off. Edit, my sister has seen several different therapists and has not been diagnosed as bipolar or with a personality disorder. She has had one therapist tell her to go elsewhere because she is too confrontational. Me saying that I was labeled the jerk was more of the way I felt. Nobody actually called me the jerk. I was the one that was told to bite my tongue. That I'm badly depressed all the time, except when I visit them. Going back home is just so comforting, and to know that it's always my home, no matter where I am. I seriously dread the day I lose this. It's one of my biggest fears. It can help to open up about it, especially with those you love and feel comfortable around. A year ago, I was drowning in debt, and my depression had sunken to the lowest it had ever been. The only thing I could feel was a general numbness, and every other thought was about ending my life. I was seriously considering going off into the desert and doing it. I was too proud to tell anyone my problems, and I didn't want to burden anyone, so I kept it to myself. My dad picked up on some of my issues and offered to have me come home and live there while he pays for a bankruptcy for me and to get my head straight. I wasn't going to do it because of my before-mentioned pride, but I was considering ending my life instead. It struck me how dumb that was at work the next day, where I broke down in tears and quit. I called my dad the same day and told him I wanted help. He flew out and helped me move back across the country and did everything he promised he would. I have no doubt in my mind that I would be dead right now if I didn't get that help from my family. My advice, don't let it simmer that long. Reach out for the help that is likely to be right there for you. It sounds like they would understand, and if not understand, at least offer you help. Don't fight that pit of numb darkness on your own. Let those you love and trust help support you. It makes a world of difference, even if it doesn't quite feel like it at the time. I understand Ukrainian, and I know they talk about how I should have been aborted or given away. I have a huge tattoo on my forearm that I've had for the last 10 years. I'm currently getting it removed with the laser, but I've been using long sleeves whenever I get together with the family. My family is extremely conservative. Freaking annoying in the summer. That I'm a millionaire. I'm super frugal and don't show it. But every time I make a big purchase, they raise an eyebrow. Hey, you don't need to keep it a secret that you're subscribed to Am I the Genius or Am I the Jerk, linked in the description below. They're both worth subscribing to, so go ahead. And remember to turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching. I used to have a crippling opiate addiction and contemplated ending my life numerous times, but was able to detox and get myself clean cold turkey all without them even knowing I had the problem. I've since had a conversation with my dad about it. He thought I had just decided to move away from my home because of a better job, when in reality, it was to separate myself from all of my old connects. I actually took a pay cut at the new job. Anywho, 2 years later, I'm doing better than ever. However, I have stayed out of town for obvious reasons. Edit, I wasn't going to edit this because of the cliche thanks for the gold stranger edits I see all day, but there are too many to reply to individually. Those of you congratulating me, thank you. Those of you struggling with the problem yourselves, please find someone to talk to. Heck, message me and I'll help with as much advice as I can. Also, I didn't do it 100% on my own. I had my wife and my young children with me as well to motivate me. I can't recommend Kratom enough for people either. At the time I was kicking opiates, Arkansas banned Kratom sales, so I wasn't able to get it, but a few months down the road when I finally went to a different state altogether for a way better job, Kratom is what helped me say no to people that had H or pills. It also helped my father-in-law get off of a long-time pain management script that was destroying his body. They don't know that I'm their least favorite child. They also don't know just how much their opinion of me still matters to me. I've kept a diary for the last 23 years, including a great deal of detail about them, both good and bad. Some very bad, bordering on criminal. My sister is the executrix of my will. Should be interesting after I die. I love them more than I show them. I can't show love to anyone in my family for some reason. They probably think I don't care about them, but I do, and one day, I'll tell them. Edit. Thanks to everybody who gave me their advice or just took their time to talk about their lives and experiences. I won't respond to everyone because of limited time, but I truly appreciate all of your comments. I, male 20, come from a family of 4, 3 sisters, 13, 26, 28. I never could show any affection to them for some reason. I never in my life told my parents or sisters that I love them, except for my little sister. I will definitely change that as soon as I finish work today. Life is not guaranteed, and I want to open myself to them before it's too late. Thank you again, everybody. That means a lot to me. If I have anything to say to repay the favor you did to me, you all should start or continue being true to you. Being genuine is the best thing you can do to improve your life. Love y'all. Cheesiness aside, it really is a shame that men aren't allowed to express affection. The rules of society basically dictate that if you're a man who shows affection, you're seen as weak or vulnerable. And it's not just affection either. It's emotions in general. In reality, most men don't know how to deal with, recognize, or regulate their emotions, and that's partly because of the stigma. It's seen as emasculating or feminizing, which the perception of femininity as negative is a problem in and of itself, but that's another conversation. In short, if you as a man keep all of your emotions locked away, they're going to either get bottled up and explode or be lost entirely when you need them the most. That I crashed a car on purpose to get out of work 3 years ago. Being bullied at work and couldn't face going back. So I crashed my car, slowly, into a tree so I could have several months off while I recovered. Didn't do it to hurt myself or end my life. I have severe anxiety, and work made it 1,000 times worse. Yes, I know it was stupid, and yes, I know I could have done a million other things, but I needed a way out instantly. Edit. Didn't claim on insurance, but got full sick pay for 6 months, and on the day it ran out, I quit. Also, went to psychotherapy as I was a tad worried I would do it again in the future, for diagnosed with Asperger's and severe anxiety. This was the UK, so no health insurance. It's government/tax funded, so it wasn't fraud. I did feel guilty I wasted NHS's time, but not anything else. Wanted to share a positive story. I am getting married in October. After my grandmother and my mother and father died, I separated myself from my cousins, aunts, uncles, surviving grandparents because our family was so toxic. In that 4 years, I fell in love, developed a new family, and have been quite successful. You never know who is dragging you down. And before anyone asks, I made multiple attempts to rekindle relationships with my family, but it's a two-way street that no one else was driving on apparently. My parents divorced in 2000, but were on and off after that. My mom and dad died 3 years apart, and because of his drunken ways and random knocks on the door, I was relieved. and I wasn't invited to the funeral or included in the obituary. I still have a little darkness from it, but there is so much light now that it drowns it out pretty well. I still have moments with my fiance when I'll get upset because something triggers me, but we talk about it and move on. I have garnered a pretty big following as a fanfic writer, and thus writing fanfic is actually the most successful thing I have accomplished in my life thus far. Edit, holy crabola guys, this just blew up in my face. Wow, this is what it feels like when you accidentally write a popular fanfiction. What just happened? Well, I'm going to try to address some frequently asked questions and state some things here. First off, so many soulmates, so many fellow fanfic writers. Hello there, hey! I have no one specific fandom, though the popular fanfic I am talking about is a fanfic called Second Chance, A New Choice, which is a Harry Potter fic posted 10 years ago and is still getting daily favorites to this day. I don't know why, don't ask me. Due to the popularity of the thing, I've even teamed up with the real editor and is currently reworking the entire thing. My fanfiction account is called Moonbird, which is my 10-year-old account where I just post any old crap. My archive of our own account is called Moonybird. It is pretty new, and I only post stuff there which I myself consider my best works. Yes, I have started to write stuff that isn't fanfiction. I am, however, very happy and grateful for my time as a fanfic writer, and it has taught me so much when it comes to writing in general, and I still write fanfiction. Heck, I'm in the middle of writing a Loki-centered MCU fanfic. No, I don't earn money on it, not a single dime. I do it for fun. It's my hobby. That most of them are just people to me. I don't feel any obligation to love them, but a bunch of them are fun to be around, and I consider them friends. Love is too strong a word though. I feel far stronger attachments to my friends, who I've nurtured relationships with for decades because we have lots of things in common that aren't as arbitrary or invisible as DNA. Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree here, at least to the extent that it feels like an obligation. Every single family event I've had, it just feels like that I'm there because I have to be. And it's not because I really want anybody to be there. Like, don't get me wrong, I still love my family and I wouldn't just leave them, but I hardly find myself making new memories with them. That's why I value my friendships online so much. They just feel closer and I feel like I know them more than my family. And for that matter, my friends know me more than my own family does. I'm not lazy. I'm just severely depressed and have PTSD that makes my everyday life a struggle. I try to behave and do as I'm told, but half the time, I don't even see a point in staying alive. I'm sorry I'm not the perfect child you wanted me to be. How much debt I'm in. My mom probably has an idea, but student loans aren't a joke. I'm going to school for cyber forensics and will be graduating this year. However, I have only recently realized that, while I am good at networking and technology, my 2 years actually working in the field has shown me that it does not make me happy whatsoever, and it actually makes me miserable. I'm an expert in IT, networking, and security. However, I hate doing it. I've realized recently that acting is what makes me happy, and I want to pursue that despite being deep in debt for a major in cyber forensics. Back when I was in high school, I did several background acting jobs for movies and commercials, and this summer have gotten back into it, and recently just did a background acting job for an upcoming Netflix series releasing next year, and it's made me realize that that is what makes me happy and gives me personal satisfaction. Acting. You do something new every single day. You meet new people and make new connections and friends every single day, and you get to be part of something amazing, and I can see myself making a living off of acting. My family doesn't know that my major and job experience and what I am skilled in actually makes me miserable, and doing something as stupid as acting, even if it's just background acting and acting in student films, makes me happy, and that I regret not going to school for film. But once I am graduated, I am going to keep pursuing acting jobs and see where it lands me. Even things as small as background acting makes me so happy and I love it. My mom thinks that after I graduate that I plan on going for my master's in this field, but I know that it'll only give me more debt for something that I have absolutely no interest anymore in getting to. I don't know how to tell her that I decided not to go for my master's. TLDR, the field I am majoring in and have years of experience in makes me miserable, and I want to throw it all away for acting. My entire family is proud of me for going into a major that makes a ton of money and that I've built a successful career already in said field, but it's made me miserable. Money is awesome, but at what cost when you're miserable every day? They don't know the actual amount of difficulties that I had going through my life with undiagnosed ADHD. I got diagnosed at 28 after having essentially my third mental breakdown because of the huge amount of pressure and disgust I put onto myself for failing to do even the simplest things. I told my parents and they were devastated, not because I had ADHD, but because they never knew or suspected. And honestly, looking from the outside, it was impossible to see. I was valedictorian, graduated college magna cum laude, participated in tons of activities, seemed to have friends, etc. But I was so broken and only did those things because of deep shame that resulted in an almost attempt at my own life that my body saved me from. It's hard to allow yourself to die from exposure. I was hoping to make it look like an accident, but after my body said, nope, not gonna happen, I realized I really needed professional help. I'm doing much better now, but I know my parents wouldn't handle that well. I cried every night for years. I'm 21 and never had a date or any kind of romantic contact to a girl. Everybody thinks I'm a super funny and confident person, but they don't know that I suffer. Well, that actually changed some weeks ago. I met a girl and had my first kiss, and I'm going on a date next Saturday. That the divorce I'm going through is a lot harder on me than I'm letting on. I wanted the divorce. No one in my family liked my ex, and they are happy I'm getting away. But the divorce has been dragging on for 2 years now and is really taking its toll on me. The first year things were fine and my family saw that I was a lot happier. But it is dragging on to the second year because my ex is refusing to cooperate and is trying to manipulate the system. I am at risk at losing time with my kids and losing half of my life savings and having to pay 50% of my paycheck in child support for the next 15 years. Note, my ex makes more than me, which is the most frustrating part. She has no problem supporting herself. She talks crap about me to my kids, but I am trying to take the high road and ignore it. It is depressing realizing I have to deal with her for 15 plus years. A big reason my family doesn't know I'm struggling is because they haven't been there for me. My mom has had some health issues and can't travel. My dad was supposed to come out for Father's Day, but changed his plans. Because my daughter had a recital on Father's Day, I had to spend time with my ex's family on Father's Day. I live close to my brother, but he makes no effort to plan events with my kids. We were even supposed to have a joint birthday party for our kids because they're a couple weeks apart, and he straight up forgot, promised to quote, make up for it, but has not reached out since. I made Dean's List for my last semester in college. I'm super proud of it, but I found it out when we were celebrating my little sister's graduation, and I didn't want to take it away from her. I also didn't want to feel like I was rubbing it in my twin's face. She apparently feels threatened that I graduated a year early, even though she's always been much more academically successful than me. Back when I was 24, I took about $300 in cash with me to a trip to Vegas with my grandma. She is well off and didn't want to go alone. She has a timeshare with the company that lets her pick and choose where she would like to go for 3 weeks each year. Her friend backed out due to illness, and she decided to invite me. We have a wonderful relationship, but when it comes to money, we don't really discuss it. Way too long a story. One night, I tell her I'd just like to go wander the strip alone. She's fine with this, as I come off a bit intimidating. 6 foot, 235 pounds at the time, long hair, kind of a biker/metalhead vibe. I ended up at the Luxor playing Texas Hold'em. I went from $250 to $30,000 in about 4 hours of play across 4 different tables. I invested that money in the stock market, and if I cashed out said stocks right now, I would have about $2.4 million. No one in my family has a clue. I live extremely humble. For some reason, I feel like they would all come at me for loans and such. I just don't want to deal with that.
What was the best moments you've experienced while playing Dungeons & Dragons? The time we planned and executed a heist to steal a fortune belonging to our rogue's corrupt father. There was a lot involved, from using a magical bird familiar to recon the keep where the money was stored, to my shape-shifting character taking on the form of a guard to sneak some of us inside, to recruiting a posse of disgruntled locals to help us cart away numerous bars of silver and gold. But the best part was when, after we set off some magical alarms on our way out, the father rushed into his vault to check on his fortune and threw back the tarp covering his stack of gold and silver bars, only to find that the precious metal was all gone and the tarp was covering a live bear. Suddenly, bear. Did I mention it's a magic bear who often wears a sign saying, "Magic bear, do not eat"? As a willing forever DM, I would just like to say that I have been waiting with bated breath for this kind of story grouping to come up in my assignments. Huzzah! On to more D&D stories. My party went from revered heroes of the town they saved to hated outcasts with an official restraining order approved by the king himself when they tried to prank an old merchant and ended up murdering a beloved town elder, then trying to steal his mayorship. This sounds like someone had to roll more than a single one to accomplish that. Telling my party that the main archery store is called Target. Thinking about that brief pause followed by a few sighs and reluctant laughter still makes me crack up. My name was Doug Windchaser, but I insisted everyone call me Darkblade. Well, my whole party just kept calling me Dougblade or Duckblade or Dudblade. I had a similar experience. I told them my name was LV Sugartips. They thought I said sugar followed by a word for a female's chest. It never changed for months of playing, and I even have a mug with them from LV Sugar Chest. Safe to say, my character has been renamed without my permission. Ah, yes, the old taser face conundrum. I once had a character called Guinevere. Everyone called her Gummy Bear. Somewhat inadvertently ended up stealing from and systematically dismantling a merchant family's bedding business across multiple cities. They were completely unrelated to the story, but we just kept bumping into them. They didn't happen to sell cabbages, did they? My character was a broken clock, right time of day kind of character. The type that would eat the only lit candle in a room just so the other party members wouldn't be able to see when they woke up. The highlight of our campaign came when I was having such crappy dice rolls that I decided to just aim for the space next to the enemy I was fighting to see what would happen. I rolled a 1, so I missed that space and hit the enemy instead. On my very first D&D session, our party was going on a treasure hunt and had just encountered a monster the DM liked to call a knuckle dragger or something like that. He had intended us to fight it like a boss battle, but before we fought, our paladin intimidated it to stand down for a turn, so we all got a free action. Or at least half of us would, since the DM rolled and said it was so hungry that it will only be stunned long enough that it will run on hunger alone. This worked great for my character. I play a sneaky human monk with literally no backbone to her and who is now trying really hard not to fight the giant ogre creature we were looking at. Just before we encountered it, we had raided a goblin camp which included having a whole bunch of jerky with us. My free action was to immediately offer this knuckle dragger all the jerky we've got so that maybe it would get full and no one would fight. Win-win. A few lucky rolls later, the fight ends before it began, with a healthily fed knuckle dragger, some level ups, and allowing us to skip a few more traps in the temple. We adopted him, by the way. His name is George. The paladin feeds him. I'll always be happy about the time my party ran into some goblins hauling oil into a ship. They opened up a barrel of oil and tossed some on the goblins, and then lit them on fire. The goblins, not being that dumb, jumped in the water. So then the party dumped oil, using a floating hand to cover a wide area, all over the water and lit that on fire too. What did those goblins ever do to you? The ship was a pirate ship that was essentially holding the town captive. The oil was actually one of the reasons the pirates were raiding, since it was in high demand in the pirate stronghold. The goblins were essentially deckhands and a hobgoblin was the captain. It was a pirate-heavy couple of sessions. Ah, pirates. Outlaws' lives are forfeit. Carry on. Why are acts of painful, Geneva Treaty violating murder so much funnier when they're carried out in this game? I may never know because pausing to work out would stop my games being so hilarious. More nautical hijinks to follow. I was DMing a campaign with a new group. Only one guy had ever played before, 5 players total. They had a ship and were traveling by sea to new quests and transporting some goods for cash when they landed. I had in mind to have them and their ship captured by pirates and have them escape later, so I sent 2 full warships at them full of pirates, hopelessly outnumbering them, thinking, there's no way they can get out of this quest. They panicked. As the pirates got closer, arrows started flying. What did they do? Well, one of the goods they had was a high-alcohol grog, and they had a heck of a rogue archer. So they wrapped a couple of arrows in rope, dunked them, lit them, and fired them into the sails of the other ships. I made 3 separate rolls for the sequence of events between the hit, the rope holding up, and it successfully lighting up the other sails, per ship, and they fricking nailed it both times, on all accounts using teamwork and assists on skills. They burned 2 fully loaded, heavy pirate ships at sea using 2 arrows. I was in awe. I had to give them extra XP for their ingenuity. My players had to fight a dragon. They rolled shockingly well throughout the fight and were surprisingly winning. So being in the open, I had logically had the dragon flee. This was surprising given they were only level 3 and only bad rolls from the dragon had kept them alive. Most everyone got an attack of opportunity in or ran as it thrashed out of the tower, making it collapse, but the half-orc barbarian wasn't having any of it. She had a custom weapon from a special orc bad guy the party had fought. It was essentially a hook on a chain you could throw and drag people to you with, and her usual greatsword as a weapon. This will become relevant shortly. As the dragon flew up, she said she wanted to grapple it. Rolled, succeeded. Okay, you're holding onto its tail. She then spent the next couple of rounds as this massive dragon flew hundreds of feet into the air, climbing to the middle of its back. The dragon was rolling and thrashing, trying to throw her off, but she rolled great every time and hung in there. Then, she wanted to throw the hook and latch it onto the dragon's face or eye. Rolls a fricking 19. Hook lodged in the dragon's eye, and now she's riding it through the air like a venom-breathing bull at the world's scariest rodeo. Then she started hacking at the dragon's wing. At this point, she's like 300 feet in the air and is expecting this to just be a badass way to kill herself. First attack hits, okay damage. Second attack crits, almost max damage. I say that the wing shears free in a gout of blood, the brittle wing bones splintering under the mighty blow. Now she's riding an almost dead dragon as it plummets to the earth from a height that would kill anything like a green Slim Pickens, planning to go out in a blaze of glory. As the dragon and orcs smash into a building in the town, the other PCs run there to surely find their friend dead. Well, half-orcs have a feature that makes them particularly hard to kill, and I figured the spirits she worshipped would be pretty gosh darn impressed by such a move, so I gave her one last chance. Roll a con save with disadvantage. For non-D&D players, this means you roll 2 20-sided dice and take the worst of the 2 rolls. First roll is a natural 20, everyone is laughing, saying if only it wasn't at disadvantage. Second roll, another fricking natural 20. Table loses its mind. The other characters dig through the rubble, and among what is left of the splattered dragon, they find a barely alive, unconscious half-orc barbarian with a giant grin frozen on her face. I ruled even with healing magic she'd be so wounded she needed a week to recover, so the party had to drag her around in a cart for a while. But thus began the reoccurring legend of Ure the Dragon Slayer through my games. Using spring-loaded gauntlets meant for deploying quickly hidden daggers to house and launch small snakes at enemies, and the look on everyone's faces when I did this. Party was fighting Orcus, final fight of our entire campaign. Fate of the universe resting on our hands. My bard had an ability that allowed me to replace up to 4 rolls with whatever I roll. Since it was just based on enemies in an area of effect, I was able to get 2 in each time. We kept a minion alive just for this. I also had an ability that allowed me to re-roll any d20 I roll 3 times a day, so I cheesed the frick out of those 3 abilities. Orcus ended up getting dominated, crit himself because I rolled a nat 20, and replaced his attack roll with it, made him fail his save with a super low roll. Then did the roll thing again, crit him again and made him fail, so he was essentially hitting himself for 3 rounds of combat, 2 of them being crits. He died from hitting himself, and my DM was visibly just, God damn it. I'm not super good at the roleplay aspect of the game. I'm a new player, just under a year of playing, but my group disbanded after college ended. Anyway, my party was in a fight from a set-up stealth mission gone wrong. One person was unconscious, the other struggling, and I had the big muscular barbarian attacking me. My DM said he was a Russian Armstrong from Fullmetal Alchemist. I was pretty low on HP, and no potions or healing spells as the unconscious player was the cleric. Out of a random turn of events, I asked the DM if instead of attacking, I could use a charisma check to flirt with him. He said, sure. By the way, my character was male. Rolled a natural 20. We made out for 2 turns, and on the 3rd turn, I failed my roll, so he stopped kissing me and attacked me. On my next turn, I said, as my character, I can't believe you. I thought you were different than the rest, that you and I could make all this fighting come to a standstill by the others, seeing the true love you and I had for each other. I see that you just used me for personal gain and tossed me aside like common trash. I've never felt so abused in my entire life. Started crying and dashed away from battle. My DM said, he technically has an attack of opportunity to use on you, but he's not gonna use it. The other player convinced the enemy I made out with to come after me and beg for forgiveness. And he managed to take out one of the 2 people fighting him, and since the big barbarian had left, the other one got scared and ran. So we ended up winning the fight, I guess? The barbarian enemy became an unintended love interest for the next while, all because I didn't want my character to die. Ah, the old bard seducing an unlikely enemy trope. Even my biggest horn dog of a bard character has never gone so far as to try this, but I salute you for succeeding, my good fellow player. I always play with the same group of friends. They're good friends, but not the greatest D&D PCs. Said friends also have a tendency for their characters to change motivations rapidly without reason, even occasionally based on out-of-game info. I love my friends, but my patience was running thin with their play whatever is the most convenient attitude. In our most recent adventure, our party was mostly good, my witch being the lone, unknown holdout. Over the course of 3 to 4 play sessions, 6+ hours each, my witch began dragging each of the other characters towards evil. It started with simple acts like convincing the druid to summon squirrels to disarm a trap laid for us, and culminated in a cruel torture scene where I burned a man alive from the inside out to get info on our next target. After the deed was completed and no one stepped in to stop me, our DM announced that the entire team would have to shift their alignments to evil. They were all complicit and could no longer claim to be good. It was so satisfying to see my fellow PCs realize that the actions they took in character would have meaning, and they could not claim to be good while committing evil acts. Everyone's playstyle has evolved significantly since that point.
Did you cackle in a suitable manner?
You're gosh darn right I did. It was incredibly satisfying to watch them struggle with the implications it had on their characters. And for the record, I wasn't attempting to strip them of their agency. I only convinced the DM to change their alignment because they had the choice to stand up against me on multiple occasions, and time again decided to say and do nothing. I wanted them to show me how good they were, but there wasn't much to show. One of our party fell into a river while we were crossing the ford. She rolled a 1, a critical danger roll, and fell into the rapids and was washed downstream. Our DM was lenient about it and really didn't want her character to die yet, as it was our first epoch of the game. So he said to her, "Roll to see if you can cling onto a branch and pull yourself out." She rolls a 1. DM is like, "Okay, so the branch broke and you're getting pulled further downstream. Roll again to see if you can swim to shore." She rolls a 1. DM, "Wow, okay, so you see a bridge coming up. Roll to see if you can hang on to the side and pull yourself out." She rolls a 1. DM, "Are you kidding me? Okay, you missed the bridge, but there's an island in the river and you reach it exhausted. Up to you guys to see if you want to rescue her." Everybody agrees. We throw a rope to her to get her back across. DM, "Okay, so roll to see if you grab the rope." She rolls a 2. DM, "Okay, so roll again." Rolls a 3. "This is insane. Okay, roll a D8 to see if you grab the rope." She rolls a 6. DM, "Hooray! The team pulls you to shore. You survive. Somehow."
You have acquired a new nickname, Toe-Rag the Luckless.
Probably when we met a friendly yet clearly evil lich in a tower. The poor paladin, the only good aligned character in a party of mostly evil, slightly trolly players, of course attacked him before we could talk to him and work out whatever we were here for. Whatever, all good with us, we helped him kill the lich. Then we discovered that he would only stay dead for so long. That just didn't sit right with us, so we prepared his tower a bit. We upper-decked his toilets, pooped on his coffee table, drew a picture of a horse doing the deed with a person on his door, we labeled the horse us and the person you, took the door off its hinges, raised the tower, destroyed its foundation, defecated on the rubble, and then left the door on top of the debris. All of this, of course, over the objections of our noble paladin, who just wanted to rid the world of evil. The direction the campaign took did not allow the character to come back, but I'm still expecting some GM retribution in a future game for that one. Totally worth it. My first campaign was with some twisted but hilarious friends. We had a couple of people with really high charisma and used the local townsfolk in unspeakable but efficient ways. At one point, we were accompanied by a local dwarven smith, with a martial past of some sort, and we needed to explore a creepy cathedral. Having heard some horrible skittering coming from the entrance, none of us wanted to go first, so we got the dwarf drunk and spoke of glory to be won in leading a courageous charge. Not content to simply scout, we also managed to hide several bottles of highly flammable liquid on him, for after the great victory, and poured a drink over him for luck. When he made his brave and glorious charge, a fire arrow in the back turned him into a rather unwilling bomb, and cleared out a nasty nest of spiders that lay in wait. Our paladin was lawful good, but also hopelessly gullible, and went along with our depraved deeds without complaint. Our second and more horrible transgression was just soon after this fiery escapade when we used a local boy who had been helping us to find his friend as a fishing lure to draw out the queen spider from a pit that looked like certain death to enter. We all set up with bows and some large pieces of rubble at the mouth of the hole, lowered in the poor hapless fellow and dropped everything we had on the spider queen when she came to claim the morsel. Unfortunately, we were only able to recover the bottom half of the lad, but our entirely amoral and lecherous druid declared, "Well, at least we've got the good half." The druid and I were the Oakenrod brothers, an incestuous pair that used every opportunity to slip in references to our somewhat deviant ways. As we found out later, our dearly departed dwarf actually had quite the kinky dungeon beneath his house, and we were sure to make proper use of the facilities for our raucous lovemaking as soon as the group left us alone in the house. I think the DM left that day a little stunned by what he had witnessed. This isn't quite the most murder-hobo-y group of murder hobos to ever murder hobo, but it sure sits in the upper quartile of them. They still don't compare to the games I ran for kids, who were on a remarkable level when it came to lacking morality, although they didn't do quite so much adult stuff with each other. My players were trying to get a free room with a Thieves Guild password discount. The rogue knew the password because she'd infiltrated the guild, but when the group was asked the password, the rogue refused to tell them. The other two party members panicked and said super confidently, "Dip, dip, potato chip." Laughing my butt off, I decided that was worth 50% off the room, so the guild let them in. Starting a new campaign with new characters, my buddy decided to play as a Goliath paladin. Our characters were meeting at a tavern for a job. He decided that instead of walking through the door, he was going to kick it down. Fails the strength check with a +4. Twice. After being thoroughly humiliated and teeing off the barkeep by cracking the door frame, he tries to enter the door normally. Our DM has him roll dexterity because he's like 10 feet tall. Natural 1. He smacks his head on the top of the door frame and passes out. My party was en route to an island off the mainland that held a quest we needed to handle. On the ride, our DM decided to have us roll history to see if we knew anything about the island. 2 of us critically failed. My character no longer believed the island existed and was sure we would fall through the island when it finally came into view. Our bard believed it was full of big-chested Goliath girls. Another time, our DM had us roll for dreams. I critically failed, and our Goliath rolled a natural 20. His dreams invaded my own, and I had to sleep to him engaging in night-long festivities with other big-chested Goliath girls. The next day, I rolled pretty low on a charisma check at the blacksmith, and my character randomly yelled, "I see Goliath wangs in my dreams!" Good times. So far, all we've done was make our characters and a few scenes, but it was so fun coming up with random names that weren't so random, like Parry Hotter and Rilo Ken. Alcohol and lots of Monty Python references were involved. First time I played D&D, I played a chaotic knight. My character would do the most random crap possible, and the rest of the group thought it was ridiculous. One of the quests is to explore a cave, and before we explore it, the entire group rested up outside the cave, and one person takes watch. My character decides that he isn't going to watch over the group and goes to the entrance of the cave and digs a giant hole and covers it, then comes back to the camp. Everyone that I was playing with was literally thinking, what the frick? So, long story short, we explore the cave, kill all the people, and almost defeat the main bad guy. But the DM decides that the bad guy flees from the cave, and I remind the DM that I want to roll for the bad guy to fall in the ditch and die. I roll a natural 20, and the bad guy falls into the hole and dies. The DM is teed off. Everyone in the group is dying of laughter because my character's idiotic nature saved the quest. In Pathfinder, there's the time I started a prison riot with nothing but the message spell and some good bluff rolls. So we were planning to break the whole party out of prison, and to do that we needed to distract the guards. My character, a catfolk sorcerer with the Rakshasa bloodline, gets the bright idea to get the prisoners fighting among themselves. One of the powers of the Rakshasa bloodline that's available at creation is the ability to give yourself a +5 bonus on bluff checks a number of times a day equal to 3 plus your charisma modifier. This character's modifier was +4, so it could be used a total of 7 times a day. Bluff is a class skill for a sorcerer, and we were playing at first level, so I had a rank in it, for a total of 8 points in it. But I was also using the Clever Cat racial feature, which gives a +2 to bluff, diplomacy, and sense motive. A total of +10. So all in all, up to 7 times a day, I could roll bluff with a +15 bonus at first level. Now, with that context established, this prison had anti-magic crystals in it because the dwarfs running it aren't stupid, but I managed to make all of my rolls to successfully cast my spells through the anti-magic. I start imitating the voices of people using the message spell, Message isn't telepathic, it produces an audible sound which seems like a whisper to anyone who isn't directly intended for. So, people are looking at each other like, "What the frick did you just say to him?" because they think they hear a dwarf mumble something rude about how small a minotaur is in their area. Soon, chaos breaks out and I'm just standing in the mess hall, looking innocent while the rest of the party tries to grab gear and take out the guards. It was hilarious and it made me fall in love with the character. Our party had been temporarily deputized so we could help catch some criminals. We got these little badges we could flash to get access to parts of the city we shouldn't have been able to go. Our rogue, being a typical rogue, decided he wanted to rob a particularly hefty-looking coin purse from someone at a tavern. He manages to hand the bag off to someone else in our party, but he's cornered by the private security of the person he stole it from. We picked a bad target. This person was important. Thinking quickly, my bard grabs our rogue, wrestles him to the ground, and flashes his badge. I convince them I'm an undercover cop and we've been tailing this guy. I proceed to arrest our rogue and contact the real police to come handle the search for the stolen purse. Our party ties the rogue up, drags him out of the tavern, and skips town with a purse full of diamonds before the real police get there. We could have chatted this person up, learned they were a famous jewel dealer, and gone on some big quest to help them in exchange for riches, but instead we Ocean's 11'd that crap and we were never heard from again. Have you ever witnessed a birth that was clearly a result of a cheating spouse? It wasn't at the birth, but I used to work for a urologist who did vasectomies. He did a vasectomy on a guy, then did the requisite 3-month and 6-month fertility follow-up test to make sure it worked. The 6-month test showed no sperm, so the guy was all set to not father children. Fast forward 2 years and he calls my surgeon fuming, ranting and raving about how they messed up the vasectomy and now his wife is pregnant. So Doc orders another fertility analysis. Of course, it comes back totally negative. A very awkward conversation ensued in the exam room that I'd have paid anything to eavesdrop on. The best part is, the couple left the office teed off, with the wife sticking to her story that she would never cheat on her husband, and the husband in complete denial that she'd ever lie about that. Last I heard, they were gearing up to sue or something, but I don't work there anymore, so I don't know what happened. Not 100% sure how those tests go, but I just laughed out loud at the thought of some dude angrily tugging away like, "Not my kid, I'll show you." These stories remind me of something I experienced firsthand the day after my son was born. Nurse: "So, your baby's blood type is A negative." Wife: "Like me." Nurse: "And daddy?" Me: "No, I'm an A+. Nurse: "You must be mistaken, that combination isn't possible." I'll leave you guys to it." Me pulls out phone and frantically Googles baby blood type combinations. Disclosure: the nurse was wrong. Props for checking first before attacking your wife. Yep, that's why he checked first, but if he attacked her straight away like some guys in these stories, they'd have one hell of a marriage to repair afterwards. A patient asked if both possible fathers could be in her C-section so that neither would miss the birth of his child. They'd figure out the details later. After a lot of careful consideration, because it did seem like a semi-reasonable plan, the answer was no because it was too easy to imagine many scenarios in which a fight might break out in the OR and instruments go flying. Also, there's a pretty strict rule about only one person allowed with the patient in the OR. In the end, she brought her mum. You know what? Out of all the outcomes here, I think they definitely settled on the most sensible one. Possibly the only sensible decision leading up to that baby. Who knows? We don't know the full story. A friend of mine went through it. He went down a dark path of substances and we'd lost touch after a big fight about how he was messed up all the time and he was wasting his life. He contacted me out of the blue to say that I was right. He needed to step up and be responsible, and that he'd quit everything cold turkey because he was going to be a dad. Apparently, he was going to help his girl get sober and they were going to have this kid and get married. He really got his crap together over the course of the pregnancy. He was clean, got a job, and got a nice place to live. She was not so dedicated. She continued to use all kinds of substances throughout the pregnancy. She ended up going into labor early at 26 weeks. She gave birth to a premature, addicted baby boy. He went directly into the NICU. She stayed at the hospital and visited the NICU until she was released. She then disappeared. She never visited the baby, never called to check on it, didn't go home, just fell off the face of the planet. He, however, spent every spare second at the NICU with that baby. However, as the weeks passed, it became pretty obvious that the baby wasn't his, as skin tone evened out and hair came in. Chick was blonde with blue eyes. My friend is super pale blonde with blue eyes as well. The baby was clearly half Hispanic. He wanted to adopt the baby, but they wouldn't let him. The state took it and it went into foster care. It totally messed him up for a long time. He relapsed for a while and got into a bad car accident. He spent some time in the hospital and then got everything back together. He's married now to a really nice girl and rapidly had 4 kids that are his with another currently on the way. Isn't that just the worst thing? What was so different about him than any other potential adoptive parents? At least he'd been there the whole time. At least he cared. Did they really think putting the baby into a convoluted foster system was the best thing for him? Glad the dude's doing well, though. Probably his history with addiction, which may have come with some legal troubles, which worsens the situation in the eyes of CPS. When I was born, my father was 100% certain that I was not his because his blood type and my mum's blood type couldn't have produced me. He punched a hole in the wall in the hospital and yelled at my mum refusing to sign the birth certificate because I have A positive blood. My mum has 0 negative and he was positive that he had AB negative because that's what his brand new dog tags said. He was in the army at the time. Turns out they'd misprinted his dog tags. All his old tags said A positive. In conclusion, a typo on my dad's army-issued dog tags almost caused my parents to divorce. To be fair, a misprint like that could kill him in other ways. But it's absolutely possible for an O negative and an AB negative parent to have an A negative baby. Like the only 2 blood types that couple could produce are A negative and B negative? Do you mean you've got an A positive blood type? I'm not a doctor, but when my godson was born, the nurse told us about this guy who had gotten 2 girls pregnant at the same time. They both wound up in the hospital just down the hall from each other, giving birth hours apart. What a lucky guy. When my mother was giving birth to my little sister, my paternal aunt was also giving birth to my cousin in the same hospital. My dad was back and forth between the 2 rooms often enough to get some looks from the hospital staff. Funny story that reminds me of this. My husband, then boyfriend, was in the process of getting divorced when I found out I was pregnant. His soon-to-be ex-wife found out a month later she was also pregnant from a guy she'd had a one-night stand with, not my husband. Prior to this, she was refusing to sign divorce papers because she hoped to reconcile even if he did have a pregnant girlfriend. Obviously, it wouldn't work out since she got knocked up by another guy, so she finally signed them. The similar part is that our due dates were 11 days apart. We had the same obstetrician and were set to deliver at the same hospital. My company switched insurances a week before I was due, and I got to pick a different hospital. Wouldn't you know it, we went into labor hours apart and delivered on the same day. Our obstetrician had to deliver my son first and then run across town to deliver her son. The OB did a double take when he saw my ex's family show up to visit her late after visiting us. They were the, "He may have divorced her, but we didn't" mind. His sister even stayed when she delivered to be her support buddy, even though she was officially with the one-night stand guy and his family was there. Our OB told us that may have been the most Jerry Springer thing she'd seen in a while. My friend was the delivery nurse for the hospital that all high-risk pregnancies go to. They're extremely busy and she's brought a lot of people into the world. She once delivered a baby in the parking lot by herself. This has come up on a weekly basis, but she shared the best story with us. A Caucasian couple come in and the mother is in labor. When the dude is filling out paperwork, the mother takes the doctor aside. She tells him there is a chance that the baby may be a different race than the father and to let her know as soon as the baby is born. The baby is born. The doctor turns to the mother and announces loudly, "Congratulations on your white baby boy." Well, this is fun. My wife's cousin, third, came out black. She's married to the pastiest Irish guy you can find. Their marriage didn't end, but this has created an interesting story. Grandma tells everyone that he is really just Native American. Her husband was half Native. He's now 15 and still no one in the family will admit that he's black. One of my colleagues in anesthesia once placed an epidural in a heavily tattooed lady. Apparently she had Steve's lunchbox tattooed above her hoo-ha. She gave birth. The OB-GYN turned to the father in the room and said, "Congratulations, Steve." The guy stated, "My name isn't Steve." No meltdowns or anything, just an awkward moment. That is brilliant. Also, what a tattoo to commit to. Clearly some misplaced faith in the longevity of a former partner's relationship. That'll be a painful one to remove. My mum is a labor and delivery nurse. One time she had a patient whose parents were present during her stay at the hospital. The staff there have a whiteboard with some general information about the patients like blood type, time spent in the wing, and like how far along. This information is nameless for IDOWorkHereLady reasons and instead has a patient's number. So this patient happens to be the only one in the wing at the time. Her father was walking back from the cafeteria at one point and noticed the board. He stopped one of the nurses and asked if the blood type for the patient on the board was correct. He knew his daughter was the only patient there. It was B positive. The nurse confirmed it was correct. Turns out he knew his and his wife's blood type. He was O positive and his wife was A negative. The combination will never yield a B positive baby. He brings his wife out and just points to the board, and this look of shock washes over her. In conclusion, father of patient in labor finds out his wife cuckolded him 25 years later by knowing his blood type Punnett squares. Did he draw the squares in the whiteboard? I would have totally done that. Funny story, I ran a lab in college, and we were teaching the kids about blood types. Kid insists that his parents were a certain type of blood and that his square had to be wrong. Came to find out he was adopted and had just found out through basic bio. Poor kid. I'm white and my wife is black. I'm a frog belly fluorescent white, think ginger light. My wife is earthy brown. No one would ever describe her as light-skinned. We have a daughter. She had a difficult labor and our daughter was delivered via C-section. She did not really get to see our daughter immediately after delivery. Later in our room, she was dozing and they brought our daughter in. My relatives and my wife's relatives all commented on how my daughter looked so much like me and was not even close to the pigmentation of my wife. So I carried my daughter over to my wife and gently woke her and showed her our daughter and said, "I don't think she's yours." We all had a good laugh. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. My friend told me this story of hers. Woman and her husband were having their first child and it was the friend's first ever delivery, OB-GYN. When she got the baby out, she looked at it, then looked at the parents and asked, "Okay, which of you has 6 fingers?" The mother broke down crying, yelling "I'm sorry" to the husband. Their neighbor apparently has 6 fingers. Did the father begin a lifelong quest to bring the 6-fingered man to justice? That is inconceivable. When my wife was born, she was very yellow and the nurse quietly asked her mum about the paternity when the dad was out of the room. She was just born with a bad case of jaundice and that nurse was an idiot. My husband is half Mexican and I'm of Native American ancestry. We both look pretty white though. When our son was born, he had plenty of the blackest hair and looked very yellow. They kept saying he was jaundiced. He was in the NICU for other reasons, but the tests didn't show elevated bilirubin. We kept asking when he could leave the NICU room with us as his condition improved. But 2 of the nurses kept insisting that he was also jaundiced and that they'd need to clear that first as my milk came in or through supplementation, using it like a threat to get me to supplement. Finally, my husband said, "He's not jaundiced, he's Mexican, damn it," and left the room. It was first time I laughed out loud in 5 days. The nurse was so flustered. My best friend's stepbrother was that guy who found out he wasn't the father because the baby was black. I'll try to make it short. Dude had gone to rehab twice and was doing really well. He came back home for a weekend and screwed his ex-girlfriend. Left and went back to his home state to continue his newfound life. Got the call that she was pregnant and dropped everything to come back and be a father. We were really worried he would relapse, but he was great. So 9 months of preparation goes by, he was going to be an awesome dad. All worries about relapsing were gone and he seemed ready to become the best dad he could ever be. Baby comes out, everyone's happy. Nurse takes him aside and after a few minutes says, "I want to ask you something. You do know that's not your kid, right?" He says, "What do you mean?" "Well, that baby is at least half black, but the pigments are probably going to really darken." So he goes over to his ex-girlfriend and asks if there's any way what the nurse told him is true. She starts sobbing and breaks down completely. Admits that she screwed someone else right around the time he came back. So he says, "All right, I'm glad you and the baby are healthy. Have a nice life." Walks into the waiting room where all the grandparents are waiting. Cheers, celebration. "Everything good?" "Yep, healthy baby, healthy mom. I'm not the father. I'm out of here." And walked right out the freaking door. The girl's parents even wanted him to pay and support. He moved back to where he got his life back together and is doing incredibly well. But man, I wish he had all that time back. At least he only wasted 9 months. If she had banged a white guy, they might not have noticed for 18 years. This is clearly an incredibly complex and nuanced problem. She was single and clearly shouldn't be judged for behaving as such, but maybe be upfront about seeing other people around the same time? Or with hindsight being 20/20, use protection. This story sucks for everyone involved. This one's about my mum. She had my brother when she was only about 16 and had a very hard birth with him. Back in that time, the husband wasn't allowed in the labor room and my grandma was at work. When my brother was born, he got stuck, so they had to use forceps and he was also jaundiced, so he looked like an Asian baby. My grandma turns up after work and is looking at all the babies in the room where they were kept and asks which one was her daughter's baby. The nurse points to my brother, and him, looking all Asian, my grandma storms up to my mum in the ward and said, "Which Asian guy did you sleep with?" Well, my mum thought she was joking, so she said, "I don't know, it was too dark to see." My grandma then proceeded to hit my mother until a nurse came in and explained. My brother is now 44 and as white can be. So I'm an NICU nurse that was floating to the nursery. A baby was born with a specific genetic abnormality, he had one missing limb, but was otherwise doing fine. The pediatrician was in the parents' room discussing with them the follow-up type stuff for the baby, appointments with a geneticist, an orthopedic surgeon, etc. At some point in the conversation, the mother asked what the baby's blood type was, to which the pediatrician responded with A positive. The father of the baby insisted that was impossible, as he and his wife, this was their third baby, were both O negative. The pediatrician got totally flustered and came back to the nursery to verify the lab's results. The baby really was A positive. We even went so far as to redraw the baby's blood and retest it. Nope, A positive. There is absolutely no chance that the baby belonged to that man. The husband left the hospital soon after and didn't show up again until it was time to pick up the mum and the baby to bring them home. The mum spent the rest of the hospital stay lying alone in the dark, mostly hiding under the covers. My aunt is white and so was her husband. He passed a while ago. When they finally had a kid, my cousin was black. The family decided to ignore it, my uncle included. This was 1989, and to gain my young teen cooperation, I got an early Christmas gift, a Sega Genesis. Love my cousin. Not me, but this was an odd one that I heard because I casually knew one of the parents. The father, to be exact. He came in freaking out because his wife had a kid. Well, he was white, she was white. The kid was born with a very dark skin tone. He instantly dumps her and starts filing for divorce. She has no idea what the heck happened. She forces a DNA test on him before she'll do anything. 3 months later, well, turned out it was his kid. Her parents, his parents, everyone, think he is a butthead. His mother apparently had a black grandmother. So the genes came through extra strong somehow in their kids so many generations down the line. Safe to say they're going through a heck of a lot of therapy. She never cheated on him and he never believed her despite all her serious protests. Been about a year now and it's better but still not perfect. This happened to my brother's friend. His mother didn't tell him his father was black, so he grew up believing he was white. He got his girlfriend pregnant and the baby came out looking more black than he did. He stormed out, broke up with her, and kicked her out. After that, he confided in his mother about the situation, and that's when she broke the news to him. He felt like a butt and a half. She took him back, but he had to work for it. She was, of course, hurt by his accusations. But as far as I know, they're still together. My dad was a doctor and he never told me about any meltdowns, but he told me they would deliver a lot of babies for unprepared parents. Teenagers, mums and dads with obvious substance or alcohol problems, legal problems, etc., generally not ready to raise a kid. For every one of those risky couples, it was usually teen parents who were 16 or 17, he would take a picture of the new mom and dad together holding the baby a couple of hours after the birth. Then a few weeks later, he would send the picture to them with a short note about how they'll make great parents and the baby is counting on them and just inspiring words in general. He has a whole photo album of the new mums and dads holding their baby in the delivery room when he was a doctor. And I have to say, it is some outstanding photography. Amazing stuff. And to tie these stories off with something a bit more heartwarming, let's have a nice long saga from small-town Illinois. I heard this from an old client who was an obstetrician. He was telling me stories about when he used to deliver babies at people's homes way back in the day. This was probably 15 years ago when he told me this story, and he was in his 80s. 83, if I recall correctly. Anyway, he was telling me about his son, and I asked if he delivered his own son. He said yes, and told me the most amazing, heartbreaking, and heartwarming story. In the late 1940s, the town ambulance/hearse/taxi pulls up at his little independent practice out in the boonies of Illinois. A volunteer firefighter comes in and says they have a lady in labor and they won't make it to the hospital, which is over an hour away. He tells them to bring her in. He delivers the baby and mum passes out. They clean her up, they clean up the baby. All seems normal. The mum wakes up and the doctor comes in to give her the baby. She starts screaming, "Get it away from me!" He's all confused and can't figure out what's going on. She keeps flailing around and screaming that she doesn't want to look at it. The doc takes the baby out back and comes back. She's calmer but still looks frantic and terrified. He talks to her and she just stares at him like he's got 9 heads. He finally asks, "Well, what do you want me to do with your son?" The mum stays silent for a long time and as he's getting up to leave, she quietly says, "Can you get rid of him?" The doc asks what she means. She says, "You know, Just make him maybe go to sleep so he won't wake up. He said it took everything for him not to beat this woman to death right there and then. He went off on a tangent about how much he loved his work, working with all the new mothers in these little towns full of salt-of-the-earth people with great family values. On and on about how happy it made him bringing life into the world, and this woman wanted him to murder her baby. He asked why, and she ended up saying that her husband is in the military and it's not his baby. She couldn't let him find out. He kind of understood her rationale for not letting her husband know, but murder? So he suggested family, an orphanage, and other options back then, none of which seemed appealing in my mind. She said no to all of them because she couldn't risk this coming back to haunt me. He told her he'd see what he could do, and he let her rest. The next day, he tried talking to her again, and she was just more adamant about making it sleep. She said she wanted to hold her baby. He refused since he thought she'd try to kill him herself. She went nuts. In the end, he sent her home and told her that he had given the baby to his brother, who was a pastor and was unable to have children. He promised he'd never tell anyone, even the kid, who she was. Then he said he taught her a lesson. If she ever found herself pregnant again, she would come to him whether it was her husband's or not. If he ever found out she went elsewhere, he'd tell everyone the story. He said he did this because he was afraid she'd get knocked up and kill the next one. And he knew he'd find out if she went elsewhere because he was the only baby doctor for 5 towns around and knew other doctors at the hospitals. Of course, she could have delivered at home on her own, now that I think about it. She never had any other kids as far as the doc knew. And he said he did check up on her once or twice with his colleagues. Supposedly she died from a substance overdose a few years later. The doctor and his wife raised that baby as their own son. His wife wasn't able to have kids. The pastor brother was just BS, and it was to make her think he'd already given the baby away. He eventually told his son a very watered-down version of the story when the kid was older. The kid ended up becoming a plastic surgeon and has like 9 kids of his own. He's doing very well, he's very happy, and he probably would have never had a shot had that small-town fireman tried to press on to the hospital and wound up delivering the kid in the middle of nowhere. He was convinced she would have delivered and then smothered the baby by the time they got to the hospital. In conclusion, lady gets pregnant by another man. Her husband has no idea because he's in the military. She ends up at a small-town doctor and wants the doc to kill the baby so her husband doesn't find out. Doc raises the baby with his barren wife, and the baby grows up to be a brilliant surgeon who gives the doc tons of grandkids and a huge family he never would have had otherwise.
Reddit, what's your deep web story? Disclaimer, I'll keep a lot of these stories lighthearted, but do keep in mind that the further you go into the dark web, the more stuff you'll find that will absolutely land you in prison. If you don't know what you're doing, stay off of the dark web. With that being said, please enjoy the video. The majority of these stories will all be the same, because they all come from people who downloaded Tor and went exploring or browsing. The vast majority have found the hidden wiki and clicked on some links. There is a fundamental misunderstanding here of what the dark web is designed to do. Those links from the hidden wiki and other point-and-click entry sites are designed to be found. The most obvious are the darknet markets. They want customers. They put their URLs out there. They list themselves on the wiki and other Tor directories. They don't want the sites to be hidden, just the owners/servers. If you were to go to one of the directories that crawls and links all the live URLs it can find, most of them will be listed as unknown. Some will take you to a site you can look at anyway, but a lot of them will take you to a page where it simply asks for your credentials before you can go any further. There's nothing else. No link to register, no FAQ, no indication of what is behind that password login. The whole idea of Tor's hidden services is that they are hidden from anybody who doesn't have the credentials to get into them. You have to get them in some other way. There's no referral links being spammed on Reddit or the Intel Exchange or general access forums. Some of these sites may be safe havens for dissidents to discuss stuff. Some of them might be the dark, spooky places of the no-sleep stories. But chances are, none of us will ever know what is behind 99% of them. TLDR, the stuff you will find by browsing the dark web is the stuff other people have found. While I personally never received anything from any deep web-affiliated salesfolk, I did live with a roommate who would constantly receive the strangest brochures. At first, we'd receive brochures for like cruise lines and the like. I wrote it off as junk mail, but they came so frequently and they started getting stranger. Christian mingle brochures, petting zoo brochures, brochures for any and all services one can think of. I kind of felt like someone was gaslighting me, but I never said anything, and the brochures would disappear as quickly as they came, so I didn't have time to stress it. Until one day I walked in and my roommate was delicately cutting into a brochure and pulling out a small baggie of powder. The dude had hooked up with the most low-key dealer I'd ever seen. Oh man, the stealth that some deep web dudes come up with is legendary. Low-key stealth? Comic book, still in the plastic ceiling, perfectly legit except the entire back page directly inside the cover was a sheet of acid. Super low-key stealth? A CD in a case, plastic sealed, played great music, looked totally ordinary, until you peeled back the case artwork and noticed that there was some SID tucked away in there. Almost flew under the radar and almost got thrown out stealth? Junk mail. I kid you not. Looked like a straight business-sized envelope, opened it up, official-looking bullcrap similar to what you'd see in regular old junk mail, until you noticed that the envelope had a hidden flap on the inside where there was, guess what, acid. I'm not kidding when I say the guy almost threw out the entire thing until he decided to make sure and tore the thing apart. That's not even talking about how some folks get away with powders, pills, and other type things. Collectible Pez dispensers already filled with pills, but looks like it's never even been opened, complete with the actual candy and original packaging as well. They're creative dudes, I swear. Obviously a throwaway. This is from way back, when Silk Road 1 was still going strong. I was looking for a certain substance, but couldn't find it in my part of the world for a decent price. Posted my request on the forum, and after a few days, someone messages me with an offer. For some reason, I accepted it and sent him around $200. Of course, I got scammed. I didn't think much of it, but posted a warning to others about this guy, saying he scammed me out of $200. Few days later, I get a message in my inbox saying something like this. Hey, I'm a vendor and this guy tried to scam me too. He just ordered an ounce of MDMA from me, and an ounce of sweet sugar crystals are on the way to his mailbox. Please send me your BTC address and I will send you the $200 he scammed you out of. The next day, I had my $200 back and a deep respect for the dark web community. TLDR, guy scams me out of $200, someone else scams him of $700 and refunds me my money. And for the record, yes, he meant literal sugar crystals. It wasn't drug jargon. Back when internet relay chat was on its way out and peer-to-peer was in its infancy, I tried to download The Sims via a private FTP. The guy I downloaded from found a Trojan on my computer and walked me through how to remove it. I would take a bullet for that dude. Silk Road, circa 2013. Purchased what was promised as a, quote, mind-blowing experience. Received a dustbuster 2 days later. Strangely, no complaints on my end. There was a German man selling pretzels. Just pretzels. I feel like this is a great way to add a layer of mystique to your product if you're a pretzel maker. Pretzels so good they can't be sold in stores. Pretzels so good they're listed alongside the experimental drugs. Way back in the day, beyond the terms of a statute of limitations, you used to be able to use Kazaa and LimeWire and stuff to look at people's entire computers, since they were stupid and set the entire computer to share. I used to send out an email a day to random people, pointing out that the pictures of them screwing their husband/wife/girlfriend, etc., and their social security number were freely available, along with instructions on how to uninstall Kazaa/LimeWire. DIY vasectomy kit on Silk Road. It was a kit of weird dentist tool-looking hooks and some tube thing. $20. The best thing about Am I the Genius is that you don't have to go to sketchy websites or risk getting arrested to subscribe to the content. Same goes for Am I the Jerk too, linked in the description below. Remember to like the video, subscribe, and thanks for watching! Found someone selling a, quote, wish pill online. Basically, you take the pill, make a wish, and it's supposed to make it come true. It just made me laugh how much they were trying to sell it off as something real. They made up fake elements that were supposedly found in nature and showed videos of them, quote, making the pill, which was really just a bunch of blue lights being flashed at the screen. They were selling it for $100 a pill. Sad thing is, there were probably a few idiots who actually bought it. Got bored about 4 years ago and wanted to see what I could find. Lots of tables with seemingly useless information, people selling drugs, people screwing animals, and vice versa. Found a few white supremacist sites, and lots of cheese pizza. Honestly, it's not as exciting as a lot of people make it out to be. There are plenty of, quote, hitmen, but I'm guessing 90% of them are cops or a scam. If you are looking to get arrested, there are CP links everywhere. A lot easier to find than I had expected, but I never actually looked at them. Plenty of drugs, some guns. There's plenty of snuff, but you can find snuff on Reddit, so it's not anything special. Overall, I wasn't looking to get arrested, so I didn't do anything besides browse the hidden wiki. Fun story, I used Tor in middle school to get past the websites that were blocked so I could play Congregate. You had to enable Flash for it to work because obviously you needed to play Flash games, but you aren't supposed to enable Flash on Tor because it allows you to be traced. I didn't really care though because I was only using it for Congregate. I miss Congregate. I miss it so bad. I wish Flash games were real again. This was back before Google. Web pages were, for the most part, still very basic HTML with JavaScript. Hardly anyone used CSS. Only discussion boards and some banking sites had anything approaching mature front-end/back-end combinations. Real deep web story, not just one about illicit activities online. I was browsing random blogs, GeoCity sites, and the like, just going from link to link. Eventually, I came upon an odd page. It appeared to be random thoughts from different people, but for the time, it was very well designed. The messages seemed to be cryptic in nature, like several people trying to pass secret notes. I started through the source, and hidden in the comments of a JavaScript were various IP addresses. I gathered all the IPs in a text file and began enumerating. Some are routers with banner messages I could telnet to, almost all at universities. Quote, "Warning, this is a secure system at University of blah blah." The default Cisco credentials from back in the day worked on most of them, but I didn't poke around. A few of the IPs were web browsers with little to nothing on them, mostly Apache on Linux or some BSD, at least one IIS server I can recall. I finally came upon a web server with a huge directory of HTML files and TIFF images, with a few smaller subdirectories containing the same. NSLOOKUP returned no reverse records for the IP. A visual route traced it as far as Colorado. The HTML files appeared to be records a psychologist or similar mental health professional would keep. The images were of faxes, apparently of both military and medical nature. As I browsed from a subdirectory back to the parent, at the top of was a new HTML file named something like 1-hellothere.html. The timestamp was from right that minute. I opened it, and in plain text was the message, quote, "We see you." No quotes, all lowercase. About 15 seconds later, the server dropped. Got it at a friend's urging. Was on it for a while until I stumbled onto a site dedicated to random animal facts. It had no design or anything. It was just black text on a white background listing off animal factoids. I was on it for a good 30 minutes before going, "The heck am I doing?" and uninstalled Tor. I saw someone offering a cure for herpes on Agora. When the drugs arrive and you look in the mail and the only thing going through your head is, "Holy crap, I can't believe there are drugs in my mailbox that someone shipped me." It's a high in and of itself. One day, I entered one of the deep websites and found a lot of ebooks. The end. I was 19 and wanted to buy a fake ID, but found out that you had to buy Bitcoin and I didn't feel like figuring it out, so I gave up. This was maybe a year or so before Bitcoin blew up. I could be living on the moon right now, but I didn't feel like it. Yeah, about that. I'm gonna have to have you Google crypto crash real quick. I decided to check out one of the successor sites soon after the Silk Road was busted. They had 2 or 3 crappy-looking guns for several $1,000s apiece, some weed, and a metric crapload of weird research drugs. I was hoping to see things I might recognize, like cocaine or heroin or LSD, but instead, I got random mixes of letters and numbers in various pills or powders. It was a lot less exciting than I thought it would be. Downloaded Tor, went to the hidden wiki, went to the Silk Road, wasn't interested in drugs, found a quote, saxaphone, was just a saxophone, found a template for counterfeiting Gucci products, considered selling Gucci products, found counterfeit medical degrees, considered buying one for 999 Bitcoin, realized that was over $50,000. Found a guy selling carrots. Like, it wasn't code for anything, he was literally just selling carrots for Bitcoin. 10 out of 10 would visit again. I was a part of the No Love Deep Web alternate reality game where we had to do a deep net scavenger hunt, which culminated in me driving to New York to answer a payphone at 3 a.m. That was cool. I once found a forum dedicated to sharing recordings of the automated messages that tell you the next stop on trains. People would post the recordings that they presumably made themselves, and then they would discuss them. It haunts me to this day. I have so many questions. When I was a freshman in high school, my best friend and I were very into the whole deep web thing. We had Tor and we would exchange onion ports that we had discovered and would explore them together. We saw some weird crap. Right off the bat was a site for a professional hitman, which we decided was definitely run by the FBI. We discovered a series of, quote, chans, or deep web 4chan clones. Some of those were very weird, and some of what we saw was definitely illegal. We were fascinated with those in particular because, of course, we were both ridiculous /B users at the time. Lots of disturbing and violent adult images, lots of gore, sometimes the two overlapped. We tended to stay away from that stuff. It was a pretty big buzzkill. Finding the Silk Road was cool, even though we didn't ever buy anything. Probably the weirdest stuff I ever found were the personal ads. There were bulletin boards where people would just ask to do the most deviant, incomprehensible crap to someone, or vice versa. I think about the Craigslist killer when I remember those things, and wonder how many of those people actually end up acting out those fantasies. Okay, bear with me on this one. I was in the midst of a deeply depraved self-pleasure session once when I saw a thumbnail of a chick smack dab in the middle of a giant dude circle. Thinking it was a typical gangbang, I clicked on it, because why not? What did I have to lose? I was experiencing a pretty ridiculously long dry spell at the time, and was pretty dang lonely. I had done the deed to the chick for the Education Connection commercials just a few days earlier, so it wasn't like it would usher me into a new realm of perversion. Anyways, I clicked on the link expecting a gangbang, but what I found was instead much more shocking. It started out as a typical one, chick playing with herself while a bunch of dudes watched on and slowly stroked it. But then, things got weird. None of the dudes banged her. Instead, there was a glass jar that was being passed around that everyone shot into. Everyone. Like 40 dudes shot in this jar. Then it finally made its way to a dude in a chef's uniform. He came out of nowhere, pun probably completely intended, and he added the white sauce to pancake batter and made pancakes. The dude made white sauce cakes. Anyways, the chick eats the white sauce cakes while everyone watches, and the weirdest adult film I've ever seen comes to a strange, uncomfortable end. Needless to say, it was very difficult to pleasure myself to. Found out about it when Silk Road 1 got shut down, so decided to check it out and found Agora. Spent a lot of time setting up an account and decided to finally buy something, so I bought a gram of MDMA, and it all worked perfectly. Then started buying more for myself, then started buying some for friends. The next thing I know, I'm ordering ounces of MDMA at a time and thousands of LSD tabs, and pretty much every drug you can think of, plus a bunch you've never heard of. I was moving all this stuff faster than I could buy it as well, really stupidly might I add. Ended up realizing that this was going to either end by me quitting or me behind bars, so I quit while I was ahead. Ended up with over $10,000 profit and a nice little stash for myself. Bought a trip to Europe and never touched the deep web again. Had about 1,000 empty gel capsules left over, so filled a bunch of them up with glitter and gave them away so people could enjoy having their crap covered in glitter. In computer science, we often got bored and screwed around. One day, we ran into the deep web. The most disturbing site we found was a comprehensive guide for cooking women. We're not talking about a short joke here. This page had information on what body types to use for specific cuts, how to prepare these cuts, and how to cook the girl so she lives as long as possible. It horrifies me that people way worse than the freaks on Criminal Minds exist. I first learned about the deep web back in grade 10 when this really strange druggy kid in my grade was going on about it. We sat together in English and had a new teacher that wasn't quite good and didn't really know how to control the class, so the last 20 minutes or so, she would just let us do whatever. Everyone around this kid's desk, let's call him Eli, would crowd around his computer and watch him monkey around on Silk Road and other weird sites he found. No CP or anything, but drugs and hitmen and weird crap in general. I was kind of sketched out by it, so I tried to avoid looking at it all, but I listened, and it was pretty screwy. Eventually, Eli decided to order drugs from some site. This was high school, so we all lived at home, so he figured he'd order DMT to his cottage, go up for a weekend, and pick it up to hide in his closet. So we typed in his address to some guy, worked out the details, and waited. Went up to his cottage the next weekend, and we all waited for his return for the stories. Eli got back, and we all ran up to him to ask if it worked. He said it didn't, and he was really mad since he had already paid the guy. He complained to whoever was selling him the drugs, and the guy was really understanding and said he'd send an even bigger package to his cottage. Eli went up the next weekend. Still nothing. The guy was very apologetic and said he'd send one more. Still nothing. Eli gave up and figured it was just a guy trying to make a quick buck. He gave up on the deep web, and that was that. Months later, he goes up to his cottage with his family and has a big dinner party with the whole complex of cottages. He's schmoozing around and overhears these elderly people talking about going to the cops. He asks why, and they tell him. They've been consistently getting shipments of drugs every week. Eli had typed in the wrong address, and the guy he was talking to had been sending more and more to the wrong people each week because he felt so bad. He was so sketched out that he quit everything and now was doing quite well for himself. Proud of him. Was on it once. Saw the usual drugs and whatnot. Then, I happened to stumble onto a blog with a non-working link that I could not confirm, but apparently, before the link stopped working, it used to be a website where you could buy human organs. Now, that doesn't seem too messed up until the blog was talking about its context. The way they got the organs was by having a team of doctors and assistants go out onto the streets to kidnap homeless people. They would put the homeless people in cages, kill them, then cut them up and sell their organs. They said their justification was that homeless people won't be missed and the police would not come looking for them. I can't confirm the validity of this website, but that is the most messed up thing I somewhat stumbled upon on the dark web. Scary stuff. Throwaway, 'cause illegalness. I was big into Bitcoin when the Silk Road thing happened, and I got into buying certain merchandise online. The first time I was very nervous about the potential of getting caught, so I decided to have the first product sent to my office. I had it addressed generically to the IT department, and my boss, who was a good friend, was going to keep an eye out on it for me. I figured this would give me enough deniability if it was intercepted. Things went very wrong. It came in, and instead of the package going to my boss, it went to his boss. Now, the company I worked for at the time is a very large behemoth with access to credit information on just about everyone in the US. Every employee is drug tested, and we have random tests. This would be a huge issue. So, I was at lunch when the package was delivered and opened. I was actually coming back when I got a call from the project manager. Hey, so, did you have anything sent to the office? No, nothing. Why? Duh, not going to admit to this. Nothing strange sent here? No? Well, boss's boss just received a package, and it contains marijuana. Well, I had enough deniability that while plenty of people suspected me, I got off. I learned something about my boss's boss that day. He didn't tell anyone upstream about it, and rumor has it that he took it home and smoked it. Edit, hostilities people. Look, had I shipped it to my home, the worst case scenario would have unacceptable consequences. Cops can intercept the package, obtain search warrant, find plenty of incriminating evidence in my home, I'm arrested, and lose my job. This is what we call an unacceptable risk. By sending it to the office, I had deniability. I increased the risk of losing $50 worth of weed, which is inconsequential. I also completely eliminated the risk of going to jail and losing my job. Even if the company made us all take a drug test, I can easily pass those. It's called risk mitigation. You identify potential risks and find the path that has the least potential consequences. As far as why weed online, all I could find in my area was Mexican brick swag. I want a nice dro.
Identical twins. What's the craziest way which you've abused your powers of mistaken identity? I had a friend who had an identical twin, and they both spent the first month of university, they went to the same school, convincing everybody that there was actually 3 of them and that they were triplets. By the time they decided to come clean, nobody would believe that there wasn't a third of them around somewhere. You can't trick me, I've hung out with Lucas countless times, etc. My dad is an identical twin. When he was dating my mum in college, he used to play a game with his twin. He'd call my mum and partway through the conversation, hand the phone off to my uncle. My uncle would see how long he could carry the conversation before he had to tap out and hand the phone off to my dad. Anyways, the first time my mum ever said, "I love you," to my dad, she was actually talking to my uncle. My uncle faltered, and that was when my mum realized what had been happening. They must have straightened everything out because they ended up married and had me. But seriously, what a colossal strategic error on my dad's part. My brother and I had a sequence of 10 numbers memorized, so if anyone ever asked if we were telepathic, we could prove that we were. This was like 3rd grade. I know 2 sets of twins that have created their own language. One of them taught them to their kids who are now step-siblings. I walked in one day and they were speaking what sounded like an alien language. They stopped for a second and stared at me because it had been a secret. My stepbrother ended up telling me, but I was amazed because it was a full conversation like it was completely normal. I just couldn't understand a word. My twin brother got me a detention for his dress code violation and neglected to tell me, which resulted in me almost getting suspended. In return, I failed his French test. My twin and I tried switching places for a day in grade school. It lasted all of 5 minutes because even though our teachers didn't catch on, her classmates knew and kept asking what I was doing in their class and where my sister was. My sister and I did the exact same thing. In 1st grade, the teacher had the class split up into different groups with my sister and I in different groups. After a little while, our teacher moved the groups so that I was moved from the craft table to the reading section, and my sister the opposite. I forget what happened, but our teacher had to leave the room for some reason, and I was able to convince my sister to switch places with me because I was a small child and wanted to do anything but read. When she came back into the room, she immediately noticed something was off and went to go get our mother, who was right across the hall with her kindergarten class. She immediately pointed out who was who, and we were sent off to the principal's office. This is the only story I have about us switching places because my sister respects authority and never wants to use being an identical twin to our advantage. That feels like a whole bunch of potential gone to waste. What's the point in having a superpower like an identical twin if you can't use it to mess with people? Here's a following couple of answers from people who weren't twins, but didn't let that stop them from abusing that power. I've run into people, not close friends, just acquaintances, I haven't wanted to talk to and have pretended to be my identical twin to avoid annoying small talk. "Oh, I'm sorry, you must think I'm my name. We're twins, this happens a lot." I'm not a twin, but had my whole class of 4th graders convinced that I was, and that my twin was also a teacher, and we would switch places and teach the other's class occasionally. It was hilarious hearing kids' theories on how to decide when I was me and when I was my twin. I went to kindergarten all the way through to the 12th grade with fraternal brother-sister twins. During the last who gives a frick anymore weeks of senior year, they switched places for a day and just refused to admit that they weren't each other. While in Iraq, I signed all of my legal rights over to my brother. That gave him legal rights to my bank account. When my family was in financial trouble, I gave the okay for my brother to take money out of my account. The bank refused to honor the legal documents and would not let my brother take money out. Next day, he went to the same bank with my passport and took the money out of my account anyway. My brother went to a job interview pretending to be me. I, or he, got the job and I've been working there for just over a year now. My father's father had an identical twin and they were both in the Air Force. First trick was that my grandfather was blind in one eye due to a childhood accident while running with scissors. His brother went and took his physicals for him, but they caught them just before pilot training. Fast forward, they're both active duty during World War II, and one is stationed in California while the other is stationed somewhere at a US base in the Pacific. My grandfather, Earl, was the guy who would put pilots in their cockpit and make sure it was sealed correctly before they took off. Mind you, these pilots are flying the fastest aircraft manufactured at the time, and nevertheless, my grandfather tells them right before they leave, "I'll see you when you get there," with a wink. His brother, with the same last name, imagine Private Swenson or whatever, was the guy who would undo the cockpits for the pilots after they landed in the Pacific, and he would say to them, "Hey, you made it. I got here pretty fast, huh?" Producing the most astonished look of bewilderment and amazement one could muster. They ran this joke for quite some time and even got written up in the newspaper about it later on. I thought it was such a great old joke. Hope you guys liked it. My identical twin died. There are some people who knew him but did not know he was a twin. When I bump into them accidentally, they always freak out. I have identical twin brothers. As children, they constantly called each other ugly, which they did not get but made my mother laugh every time. They still do it today, mostly as a dumb old joke.
One of my nicknames for my twin is Ugly. Some of the others are Lefty and Spare Parts. When I was younger, me and my non-twin sister convinced our younger sisters, who were twins, that everyone in the world is born a twin, so you've got spare parts if you have an accident. We made up stories about our own twins and how much we missed them, but how they'll always live on as our lung or whatever. Then we asked them which one of them was the spare. Twins fighting is brilliant. They're so evenly matched. One of my high school teachers said she had a twin take and pass her driver's test for her. No one was ever the wiser. My dad is a twin, and every so often one would break up with the other one's girlfriend. Oh man. How could you say those things? How could you be so cold? I don't know, it's like I hardly even know you. Bye. I imagine however it actually transpired, it left the girlfriends pretty confused in some way or another. I went to a convention with two friends who were identical twins. They dressed the same one day, hoping to throw people off and have some laughs, which worked perfectly, at least until they got separated. Then they both ended up going around in circles using the "Have you seen someone who looks exactly like me?" line to try and find each other. My dad has an identical twin brother. This is his famous story. My family is Iranian, and it's mandatory for young men to serve in the army for a minimum of 2 years. They do have a few exceptions. For example, if your eyes are weak or if you can't see without glasses, then you don't have to serve. My dad had the weaker eyes between the two of them, so he failed his own exam. He took his brother's ID to the army officers and failed the exam again to get his brother out of that responsibility. I'm reminded of a story I saw here on Reddit about a really old man who was with his wife for like 50 years, eventually ends up passing away, and without ever having told anyone he had an identical twin. So his brother shows up to the funeral and chaos ensues. That would be an awesome story, like if the other old man's life is in shambles at the time, so he shows up and then decides to keep playing his brother, who's extremely successful and loved all over town. He fakes everything by acting hella confused about the funeral. I don't know, just a thought. 1. Took the SAT for my brother. 2. My brother had me go on a date with a girl he met online when he was away. How did the date go? Did he end up continuing to see her? Did she ever find out? I have so many questions, you need to explain. 2 weeks later, when he came back from the trip, he went on a date with her and she didn't detect it. Later, when we told her, she couldn't believe it. We were all so entertained by this for a long time. There are some questions that the poster of the story never answers satisfactorily. How did the date go? Did she stay together with the original brother? Or the second one? Think of us nosy weirdos reading your stories when you post them. Dated a girl a couple of years ago that had an identical twin. They said they'd switch class schedules for a day and stuff like that for fun. I was able to tell them apart due to the way that they presented themselves. Everyone has slightly different facial expressions and stuff like that. For fun, my girlfriend would leave the room I was in and her twin would sometimes come in and pretend to be her. Rarely worked. Fun game though, and no, I didn't have a three-way with them, so don't ask. Man, if you noticed that you were talking to the sister, you should have played it off like you didn't know. Then when your girlfriend came back in, said stuff like, "Oh man, you've never kissed me so passionately before, that was amazing." My sister and I were handed each other's picture forms on our senior year picture day in high school. We thought it might be funny to not switch them back, take each other's yearbook, school ID card pictures, and have a few people know we did it. Harmless shenanigans, right? Then one day at the end of the year, after SATs, AP tests, and college applications were all over, I got called into the principal's office. This had never happened to me before, and I had no idea why on earth I'd be called down, since I hadn't gotten into any trouble. I get there, and my sister has already arrived, and I'm just like, oh crap. Principal sits us down and tells us that when cross-referencing our school ID photos and the driver's licenses we provided at the SAT, College Board found a discrepancy and was investigating the possibility that we might have taken each other's tests. I hadn't even thought about that being a possibility, and all the blood went to my stomach. My sister and I freaked out, and as calmly as we could tried to explain what we thought was a harmless prank. But he kept a straight face and insisted that if there was any possibility that we switched tests, our scores would be invalidated. After about 10 minutes of explaining and reasoning with him about how we'd comply with any investigation, but we swear we took our own tests and so on, he calmly told us it was all a joke. I felt like I was going to pass out. He was laughing his butt off and saying things like, "Got you good," and reassuring us that everything was fine and that we should go back to class. Turns out that since we have family in the school district, the principal had heard that my sister and I switched and decided it would be brilliant to make us think our futures were in danger. In his defense, it was an objectively fantastic prank and his delivery was so level and authoritative, it at no point occurred to us that College Board doesn't reference yearbook photos to confirm identities.
Props to him for creativity, but what goes around comes around. In conclusion, Sister and I switched places on a yearbook day. Our principal pranked us hard months later by making us think our life careers were in danger. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Not a twin, but Asian. Back in middle school, my friend and I took each other's classes for an entire day, and no one noticed. I think the best one I ever heard was twins who worked super ultra overtime at the same job by simply pretending to be the same person and trading off shifts, putting in 120 hours a week or so. A teacher of mine who's a triplet told us that once she took an exam for her sister that she already took and studied for, got an A- for herself and an A for her sister. And the third triplet got a D because the other two excluded her from the scheme. Honestly, being an identical twin is not so much about cool pranks as it is responding to people who ask, "Why are you so nice to them in chem class and then totally ignore me when I try to talk to you in English?" Or this, most common problem, "Guy, hey, what's up? Love the new hair." Me internally, "Do I know this guy? I didn't do anything special to my hair. Who are you? I can't remember who anyone is." Then out loud, "Hello, Guy. How brutal was that test the other day, right?" Me internally again, "Maybe he's in my psych class? Wait, did we even have a test? Maybe just go along with it. Oh, I am totally screwed for next week." Guy, "Next week? The final's not until the end of the quarter." Finally, "Oh no, he thinks I'm my twin. Should I say something? That'd be awkward. I'll look like an idiot for just pretending to know him. He might get embarrassed. Maybe I can just wing it and no one will have to know that I'm me." At this point in the conversation, I decide if I should continue to be my twin or reveal myself. This is definitely my fault, in part, because I'm so bad at remembering faces. People in my classes, people at bars, people from past classes. I'll meet people on a smoke break and find out that, to my surprise, they've been sitting the next table over from me for a few weeks. Add twinliness into the mix and it's so awkward. Imagine the "is he waving at me" feeling all the time. I get that, plus a conversation. If they ask for help or make it obvious that they just want to chat, I tell them I'm the twin. My brother and I went to different colleges and didn't generally reveal to the friends we made that we each had a twin. One day, a group of people approached me in the street, calling me by my brother's name and asking me if I'd like to join them in the pub. I knew that my twin brother was already at the pub, so I said I'd bet them free drinks if I beat them to the pub in a foot race, even if I gave them a head start. They agreed and ran off at top speed while I stood there casually checking my watch and buffing my fingernails on my lapel, only for them to arrive exhausted and find me standing at the bar, drink already in hand. It's doubly impressive that he managed to change clothes on the way to the pub. I have a twin sister. I'm a guy. My little brother was born 2 years later on the same day. However, now that we're older, we look practically identical, close enough to fool his kids at least. When we do stuff together, we often get asked if we're twins. I answer yes, he answers no. This will need some backstory. My wife is a twin. Her sister and her both work at the same camp. My wife worked at the camp during the school year, while my sister-in-law worked during the summer when there was a lot more staff. Basically, they were trading places all the time, but staff of the camp would change during those times as well. Summer staff versus non-summer staff. So it was never really an issue. My wife worked mostly in the kitchen, while her sister worked as a counselor. Generally, the two were never seen together when they were both working there. It should also be said that my sister-in-law was often mistaken for a few other people around camp anyway, which only helped the situation in the end. At the end of the week, the groups of campers would do skits. One group of campers decided their skit would be about a machine that would multiply things. So my sister-in-law decided to help them out. The skit came down to the campers saying that my sister-in-law was such a hard worker that she needed a clone to help out around camp. At this point, the campers in this particular group knew about her twin, but most of the other campers did not. They turned on the machine and put my sister-in-law in. Out came her and a boy that had the same hair color and style, but that wasn't quite right. They got rid of the boy and put her back in. Out came a girl with a different hair color, but at least it was a girl this time. Next, the machine spit out a girl with the right hair color but not quite the same build. The fourth time, the machine spits out my wife. Being a nearly identical twin, this basically blew the audience away. In conclusion, my wife and sister-in-law freaked out some kids and even some adults with their shenanigans. What you guys don't understand, and maybe some other twins can back me up here, is that it's not so much tricking the teacher when switching classes as it is keeping all the other students quiet about it, since they can usually tell right away. At least for me and my brother anyways. My sister and I have picked on my partner quite a bit. We've tricked him in mostly harmless ways, but it's fun to watch his reaction. Other than that, we've always had the same schedules at school, so we haven't really taken advantage of our twin powers. I'm curious to see other responses.
I dated an identical twin in high school, and I was always terrified that they would frick with me. The only way that I could tell them apart was because my boyfriend had a dot on his forehead. But what if they'd drawn one on the other twin, and had him pick me up just to mess with me? The anxiety.
Note to self, never date twins. Or perhaps I'll end up meeting someone that has a twin without telling me in any case, and then the charade will go on even longer. Oh god, this is terrifying. I worked in a locked psychiatric ward while my twin brother works in a local emergency room. According to him, he has had at least 2 scary as frick psych patients come up to him saying,
"Hey John, you crazy frick, how are ya?"
And then ensues a long, scary conversation that he is not me in. I knew a pair of identical twins in high school who fricked with people all the time. I quickly learned how to tell the difference out of self-defense, and they always gave me grief for ruining their fun. We'll call them Steve and Dave. Anyway, here's the story they told me. At their high school, they were both starters for the football team. One was a running back and the other the fullback. For 4 years, Dave blocked for Steve, as Steve got the yards, the touchdowns, and the records. In the final game of their senior year, they switched jerseys without telling their coach, and for one game, Steve blocked for Dave. Dave set the school's single-game rushing record under Steve's name. Because they were blabbermouths, the story got out and the coach was teed off at them for lying and for making him look like he'd put the wrong brother at the running back the whole time. I had a good friend growing up whose dad was a twin. A group of us girls went to the movies one night. Twin's dad's daughter goes to the bathroom while we wait for her in the lobby. Wouldn't you know it, not even 5 seconds later, we see her dad in the distance, holding hands with another woman. We start freaking out, thinking we've caught her dad cheating. Friend comes out and we explain the situation, ready for battle. She laughs and says, "Oh, that's my aunt and uncle." Then she goes up to them and gives them a hug. My twin sister and I aren't really able to fully utilize our ability due to not living with each other for most of our lives, but we do like to have fun with it. If we visit each other's town with a new group of friends, we'll switch places with one another and always make the newcomer look like they're amazing at figuring out random tips and tricks of the city. On a more serious note, my sister and I switched places about 8 months ago in order to save her from a terrible boyfriend. My sister is too sweet to her to fly, but she really needed to dump this guy, so we switched places. I met up with the jerk at the bar and told him very honestly that him and I, my sister, couldn't be together due to his abusive nature. Not identical, but fraternal, still both girls, which makes more alike than not alike. We would usually say things at the same time, but that was a coincidence. When we realized this, we started doing it on purpose to creep people out, and it really creeped them out. One especially that I remember was in 8th grade. A dude always told my sister she confused her with me, so we knew that if he saw us together, he would say something along the lines of, "You're totally identical." So the time comes and he says that, so we go and say at the same time, "What are you talking about? We're totally different." The look on his face was priceless. I wish I could have recorded it. This doesn't really go with abusing my powers of identity so much as going out of my way to not be mistaken as my twin sister. She dated some D-bag in high school who literally could not tell us apart at all. He began pursuing her, but since he was an idiot, he didn't even really take the time to get to know the difference between us two. He would mistakenly hug me, or be flirty, or check me out, or call my sister's name, all while my twin was standing 1 foot away. It became too awkward for me to the point where I just completely ignored his presence and didn't make eye contact when he was around, so he'd finally stop mixing us up. Sometimes that didn't work, so I would immediately sarcastically insult him and throw in a couple of dudes and bros to solidify the fact that I was the non-romantic twin. Even then, this moron couldn't read the flashing signs, so I just started to turn around and walk away whenever he approached. He eventually picked up that his twin was the one who wasn't a complete B-word to him.
Professors and teachers of Reddit, what's the most pretentious thing you've heard a student say? Next year, you're still going to be here BSing, and I'm going to be making it big in the real world. He got held back. He is not in my class this year. I deserve an A for this course because I was a model student. I've heard some whoppers, but this one came from a student who completed, I think, 2 of the 5 required papers. and both were crap, missed half of the classes, was 15 plus minutes late every time he did show up, never participated in discussions, and didn't turn in a single homework assignment. To this day, the lack of self-awareness boggles my mind. Middle schooler said, "I'm only taking Spanish so I can tell my housekeeper what she needs to do." Oh God, it was me. I was the pretentious student. I was going into the 7th grade after transferring out of a private school to a local public school. I met with a couple of my upcoming teachers to take some placement tests since I had been taking a couple of, quote, advanced courses at my Catholic school. I say advanced because, as it turned out, the only real advancing I was doing was seeing how far I could shove my head up my butt. I basically preened the entire interview process whilst dropping some heavy-handed hints about being moved up to high school. I don't remember the specifics of what I said, or most likely I won't let myself, but I definitely implied that the tests were just a waste of time and it would be best to just enroll me in 9th grade. In my Catholic school, I had been in the highest level math course for the school. My public school entrance score put me in remedial pre-algebra. I cried. A lot. 4th grader. I don't need to do good in school. I can go to any college I want. My parents are rich. The thing is, he's not wrong, but can he stay there? Mommy and daddy can pay for your classes, but if you're not passing them, that's on you, bud. Do you know who my father is? His dad was the head of the school board. No craps were given that day. I've also had a kid say, "Didn't you wear that outfit last week?" This was at a very wealthy school. I was half expecting that first kid to start shouting, "Potter!" Post-grad students stayed after on day 1 to tell me, "Just so you know, I'm going to be very bored in your class. But it's not your fault. I just already know everything you're going to talk about." She completed the course with a D-, failed both of her other classes, lost her funding, and now works at Panda Express. From a 20-year-old undergrad, I'm going to be an accountant. I'll never need this database stuff. Well, to be fair, they probably won't. They'll learn all about the superior power of SQL databases and all they can do with them in the modern world. Then they'll join a practice and use the same Excel documents with archaic VB macros that have been used for decades because getting accountants to adopt new technologies is like flogging a dead horse. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's like a single computer running Excel somewhere in the world that if it were to crash, it would cause the entire world to just go into flames. Not from a student, but from the student's parent. He doesn't need to do the math, because he's a prophet. Prophets don't do math. Would you make Jesus do math? Jesus was a carpenter. He knew his math. My mom pays your salary, so give me an A. I'm a professor now, but I think my favorite comment came from a classmate of mine during my master's program. We were talking about some mass media theories, and the guy starts talking about framing. His contribution began with a long-winded explanation of the concept, and ended with him saying, "This is my idea, by the way. It's something I've been working on for the last couple of months." The list of citations on the Wikipedia page on framing is about 200 sources long, dating back to the mid-1950s. I'm a 4.0 on the dean's list, so academic misconduct won't be a problem for me. I'm going to be super wary of all this guy's papers. Like, sure, people cheat out of desperation, but desperation takes 2 forms. Desperate to not fail, and desperate to get the A and not the A-. As a high school English teacher, I was counseling a freshman student, about 14 years old, that she should probably do some of her coursework. After all, she wouldn't want to come to her senses as a junior or senior and realize that she was a year or 2 behind in credits and wouldn't be able to graduate. Her response? "Why should I listen to you? You make about as much as a garbage man." Lots of laughing, giving high fives to friends in class. Plenty of other students to focus on in class. I just moved on to help others in class. Tough to convince a 14-year-old to think ahead. Just checked her transcript. She's about a year and a half behind in credits. It's going to be very difficult for her to graduate this year. Side note, thank you to all the sanitation workers out there. Our comparative wages aren't really the point of this memory. Wow, it would take all of my self-control not to respond, "Yeah, and the trash they deal with doesn't talk back." Professor, I'm subscribed to Am I the Genius. Why didn't you give me an A? Oh, was it because I wasn't subscribed to Am I the Jerk linked in the description below? Thanks, Professor, in this weird analogy. I'll go do that. Not personally, but while I was student teaching in a wealthy area, another teacher told me he heard a student say that their parents got them a crappy car, but it was just until they totaled it. Then, after they destroyed it and learned their lesson, they get a Ferrari. I don't understand how this would teach them a lesson. Crash your car faster so you can get a new one and possibly be injured and or die in the process? Edit, probably an assassination plot. Notre Dame has required theology classes in first year of studies. My professor was a pretty laid-back guy, so one day, we're discussing the Tower of Babel. Humans all speak the same language and get tons of stuff done. They decide to build a tower to heaven. God doesn't like that, so he makes humans speak different languages so they can't communicate or build further. The professor asks why God would do something like that, and one student raised his hand and said, "Well, it's not for us to question God." The prof gave him a bemused look and replied, "Yes, it is. We're in a theology class." It was a fun class. I went on a date with a professor at Stanford who had a student raise their hand to ask if he was qualified to teach the course, most likely because he had a southern accent. I doubt they asked him that when he taught at Georgia Tech. I got a 77 for my final grade. Why didn't you bump me up to a B? This was after she didn't turn in the last 3 homeworks and had to have an extension on her final project because she didn't finish. My wife teaches a class where you literally have to show up and that's your grade. She understands athletics, family emergencies, etc. She had a student come in at the end of a semester and whine about the grade he got, a D, I think. The kicker? He flat out told her the reason he missed so much was because he was napping. He was lucky he got the grade he did. Clarification: the class in question is a performance class. You literally show up to practice for the performances, and that's your grade. As a learning management system admin, I hear all kinds of crazy stuff during grade appeals. Last semester, a couple of kids on a sports team were cheating in a class. Each of the 5 would take turns taking the test first online and then in succession, so that while one may not get a great score, the rest usually did. So, the instructor asks how to resolve the issue. We make the 30-question test randomized from 100 question pools. Immediately following the next test, we have a meeting with the dean. Apparently, the students felt it was unfair. Nothing happened to us or them, but the fact that they actually filed a complaint because the test couldn't be cheated on amazed me. Edit, well, there went my inbox. So to answer some questions. Number 1. Blackboard is the #1 LMS provider in the world. Can it be terrible? Yes, if done wrong. Number 2. Random tests are not unfair if the questions are pulled from the information you are covering in class. Number 3. Yes, prevention of showing test results is an option, but does nothing if they are all in the same room just staring at the first student's computer and taking down the questions. This is why we randomized it. Number 4. There are lots of ways to tell if people are cheating. The easiest is how long it takes them to answer questions. Test start and end times also play a role. So in this case, one person would log in, take the test, and then show the results to the others. The rest would all log in at the same time and begin to answer a pretty difficult test very quickly. Number 5. They had no actual justification to complain, and they still filed a complaint. That's the nature of college. People complain about everything. If they can find a loophole, they will exploit it. Probably too late to the party, but I'm a high school art teacher. I was talking about art influences, and a kid said, "I'm not influenced by anyone. The only art I like is my own." Okay, kid. Oh man, I have a story about this. I was in the fine arts program at a state college. Had a classmate, Dawn. She was a, quote, perpetual student, meaning she'd been in college for 10 plus years. She was over 30 in classes with 19-year-olds. We were in a figure drawing class together. Dawn was doing some god-awful rendition of the figure model, and the professor steps up and gives her some pointers. We were completing a specific assignment, not just doing whatever, but Dawn was drawing something way out of left field and unrelated to the figure study. Anyway, so the prof steps in and is talking to her very politely about how it's figure drawing time and not glitter glue stick time, and Dawn just looks at her and says, "But that's just not how I do my art." Professor was dumbfounded and I was cracking the heck up, Like, if you're not going to learn different art styles, why are you in an art class? Some context. It's a private Catholic school, but not the safest/best around. I was suggesting to a student to stop wearing their watch because it might be stolen. Quote, "But this is just my everyday Rolex." Student turned in his final paper, and instead of responding to one of the prompts, he wrote his paper on how much he hated the class and how terrible we were as teaching staff. I gave him a B because, while he didn't answer a prompt, he backed his claims up with evidence, which is well above average work compared to his classmates. All the same student. My dad said I don't have the personality to be a nurse. I need to be a doctor. I don't have time to join any student organizations. I'm married. I'm gonna make all A's this semester. Oh, that academic warning? I took care of that. She had a mediocre GPA, hadn't made good grades in science and math classes. Unless her dad built the medical school, she wasn't getting in. And that academic warning was totally legit. I spoke with her professor, and he laughed for quite a while when I told him that she said she would make an A. He said she might pass with a C- if she was lucky. The kicker? Her husband then called our office and threatened to get us all fired for daring to tell his precious wife something she didn't want to hear. Gave us a deadline to apologize to her before we called the president of the university to file his complaint about our behavior. Looked him up on Facebook. One of my teacher's assistants is an excellent Facebook stalker, and he works at a local bike shop. Not even a student at our university. We turned the voicemail over to campus police, and they had a chat with him. Update, May 2017. After 2 changes of major and 3 or 4 changes of pre-health designation, pre-med, pre-dent, pre-PA, whatever else, this student finally graduated. She is going to go to the local community college in the fall and start their respiratory therapy program. If she found her passion, then I'm happy for her. Yes, these are my favorite stories. I love the ones that have happy endings. I once overheard a student in the college-level science major-specific class that I teach say, "I wonder if this teacher will be able to tell me something I don't already know." And apparently I did, because he failed the class with a 32%. Edit. Okay, wow, this blew up overnight, but 2 things. 1, I did not fail him or discriminate against him in any manner because of his arrogance. He just failed. 2, I have an 87% pass rate for my class. I teach a biology class that many only take if they want to major in biology or organic chemistry, so it isn't often that I get students passing through who are unmotivated or are bored by the material. I'm a good professor and certainly try my best to help my students succeed, but sometimes they either can't or won't. I don't really need to learn this kind of basic accounting. I'm definitely going to get a job at Goldman Sachs. To me, his TA. Spoiler, based on his grades, this kid was definitely not getting a job there. I don't deserve an F, you frickin' prick! I know, but it's as low as I can give you. Source, email between my dad and one of his more charming students. Edit, it is worth noting that I never knew who the student was, just that the exchange had taken place. As another commenter mentioned, it was the student who sent an email regarding his/her grade. In regard to the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, we're fine. We're the only students who have a chance of passing the AP exam, so you should just focus on us. She was referring to herself and 3 other classmates. She was also loud enough for the entire class to hear. Edit. For everyone asking if she was right, the class I taught had 20 kids. In my opinion, 16 of them had a shot at passing, but only 6 passed, including 3 from her group. One of the kids who wasn't in her group beat all their scores with a 5. So no, I don't think she was right. She also said at the end of the year, "You know, Mr. Chief Lazarus, it's gonna be your fault if I don't get into the college I wanted since you didn't give me an A." Unfortunately, this happens a lot in schools where standardized testing is tied to big funding increases. So-called high kids and bubble kids receive all the attention, ensuring they will pass and teachers' efforts aren't wasted on other students. Maybe this kid was a jerk, or maybe they've been isolated and focused on during their whole academic career and they thought that this was just how the system worked. Edit, for people telling me I'm wrong, my source is my experience as a high school teacher. Our testing facilitator sat me down and told me which kids to work with during testing seasons. It was basically the top 30 to 50% of any given class. Everyone else was ignored because she assumed they wouldn't score high enough to help us hit our numbers. Your school or district may be different. This was mine. When I used to teach first grade, we had our school-wide open house in the second week of school, so we're maybe 7 or 8 days into the year. I had a parent come up to me and ask, "So, how is my daughter doing academically compared to everyone else in here? She'll be going to an Ivy League school, so she needs to be the best student in your class." I told her that we were less than 2 weeks in and that I don't, quote, rank students for first grade. The mom was a thorn in my side for the rest of the year. I'm a student, but our teacher once gave us the whole, if you're not going to be respectful, if you think you already know the material, then just leave. A kid stands up, walks over to the door, realizes that everybody is staring at him, thinks about going to sit back down, but decides on just leaving. The teacher actually let him leave for like 15 minutes before going to get him. This was middle school, so he couldn't leave campus. My first year teaching, I subbed in a grade 10 English class. It was September, and one of the girls in the class was heavily pregnant, so would have gotten pregnant in grade 9. All they had to do in this period was write 1 page about themselves. Easy sub lesson. So I'm walking around checking work, and this girl and her group have done crap all. So I pop over to them and remind them they only have 20 minutes left and need to get something written on their page. Without a pause, the girl looks up at me and says, "Miss, Jesus didn't write his own Bible now, did he?" I just walked away. And Mary didn't screw anyone to get pregnant. Finish your essay. This one's sad, but a high school kid showed me his Patek Philippe watch, told everyone it's $18,000 and worth more than his teacher. His dad gave it to him. Dad, or mom, never came to PTA, didn't answer calls or respond to his grades or notes home. He stayed with a different family. His parents vacationed without him. Just give me the exam. I already know all you tell me. I've been doing this for 4 years back home. I mean, wood framing and concrete. My trade I teach is steel stud framing, drywall, taping, etc. No concrete or wood framing. Never mind the fact that the apprenticeship itself is 4 years. From a senior who can barely read or write after I told him he needed to check his essay for spelling/grammar errors. Whatever, man. I'm gonna come back here in 5 years and make way more than you. I said, considering that I'm a public school teacher, I certainly hope that he will make more than me. This is from a 16-year-old student arguing about the grade she earned on a research paper. My essay doesn't need any citations because my opinions are fact. I have never in my life been consumed with the urge to backhand a child more than this one right here. I gave a student a C on a philosophy paper, and she says to me, "Do you know who my father is?" To this day, I have no idea, but the grade didn't change. We're gonna end this with a wild one. I have a student that refuses to do anything the way other students do it. He's never been able to make a single, regularly scheduled workshop or presentation 3 years now. Oh, medical school prerequisites? They don't apply to him. He once requested that I come in on a Saturday to meet with him because my regular office hours, quote, didn't work for him. He was my student for 2 years, but now that he's an upperclassman, he is handled by one of my colleagues. I warned her. She didn't believe me. Until he walked into her office this morning to tell her he can't make any of the required workshops he needs to attend, but since he already filled out the paperwork, that's cool, right? He would also like us to find a way for him to graduate early because he just got engaged and wants to use his tuition money for the wedding or something. I don't know. I don't really listen to him anymore. Edit. My throwaway account now has more karma than my real account. I have to get some sleep now so I can go back to the university bright and early to mold young minds or something. I will try to remember this account and update with news of this pretentious jerkwad. But for now, the sweet, sweet release of sleep awaits. Edit 2. He just came in the office wearing skinny jeans and a fedora! Edit 3. It's been 2 months and no one will see this, but this jerkwad sent me an email the other day and spelled my name wrong. Don't send me an email asking for a favor, then spell my freaking name wrong. Spell other crap wrong, but check that you spelled the name of the person you are emailing correctly. Edit 4. 5 months since the original post. He had his committee interview. I spoke to the prof who conducted it, and she said he started off really well, but then the mask slipped and it became very obvious that he's a huge jerk. He thinks very highly of himself, even though he isn't really very accomplished. By pre-med standards, He's pretty average. He brags about things he's done like he's the only person that has ever done them. He's still trying to graduate early so he can hurry up and get married, but med schools aren't going to be impressed by that. I'm still trying to get on his subcommittee panel since I didn't interview him. Not to tank it, since I will be one of 20 people, but to see what everyone else thinks. We have far more impressive students who have accomplished a lot more, and I'm really backing their applications. And, since I have the flu, I'm headed back to bed. Edit 5, May 2017. I finally logged back into this account and had a bunch of messages asking for an update. I read the student's committee letter a few weeks ago, and it was nicer than the one I would have written. From what I heard, the subcommittee lowered the author's scores a bit since they thought she was too kind to him. They've all dealt with him at some point and find him very pretentious. It's going to be a few months before I find out his fate, but I think he graduated, I haven't checked, and is probably planning his super pretentious hipster wedding. My colleague next door now refers to him as, quote, my favorite student, whenever she hears from him, in a sarcastic way.
What's the most hilariously useless magic item you've ever had in Dungeons & Dragons? In my last campaign, my players got a hammer that shoots confetti and makes a party blower sound on crits. A dramatic moment happened where he had to put his pet owlbear down, as it was morphing into a monstrosity because of the big bad evil guy. Because the creature was on the ground morphing, he auto-crit. The beast lies there, writhing in pain, trying to hold on to its own self for as long as possible. You lift your hammer solemnly into the air, feeling the weight of not only the weapon, but the situation. As you bring it down, you feel flesh give as the skull has been pulverized from the transformation. The sound of teeth clacks against the ground, echoing in the room around you. The party looks at the ground, and a moment of silence consumes you all. So I'm doing my second video on Dungeons & Dragons stories in 2 weeks, don't hate. And yes, every time the chance to do this comes up, I'm going to leap at it like the hyper-obsessed nerd that I am. The +3 sword of Edward Tumbleton slaying. Edward Tumbleton was a tailor in a nearby city. They discovered a sword that was very effective at killing him. Just him. Neither the party nor any other person on the planet had any reason to kill the guy. The party ended up killing him by blowing up his shop with a fireball. The sword was never used. Poor Edward Tumbleton. I think at some point he got on the bad side of an artificer who told him, "I have a sword with your name on it," and it turned out to be true. Gave my party a sash of swimming, see retextured aquatic cummerbund. They put it on the donkey pulling their wagon and promptly forgot about it. I haven't though. 2 years later, I haven't. Haha, still waiting on the moment that the donkey will be the only one to survive the flood. The donkey is going to get sold or killed, and they won't remember the sash of swimming. That's what my party would do. The mug of pea warm chongo. Turn any liquid that enters its internal volume into, you guessed it, warm chongo, the temperature of fresh pee-pee. They threw it into the sea, and yes, while it would eventually produce an infinite amount of PWC, it didn't produce it faster than the various flora and fauna of the sea could consume it as current carried it away. The toils of all that be. Help not the primal fault. Rivers flow into the sea, yet still the sea is salt. I used to love making magical items that were off the wall. I felt like the game's items didn't reflect the silly stuff someone would make if they had the time and manic attention to detail. There's a devil called Chiton. It's chain-wrapped, chain-swinging, freaky, pain-loving Hellraiser type. My party fought one in a dungeon. He's wearing a unique amulet that makes chain. You place a piece of chain on the surface and the amulet starts slowly, magically generating a chain of the same dimensions. It only makes 10 feet a day, but over time you could make a few gold selling mundane chain. I just thought it was thematic and interesting. The party left the dungeon, went to town, found a smith, and poured their entire life savings into making 2 links of solid gold chain that would make Flava Flav weep. And I wept. What a fool I was. Reminds me of when my DM, tired of us breaking down doors, introduced adamantine doors on a massive castle, but he let us lift them off the hinges. We got so rich we decided to abandon the campaign. I gave one of my players a delicious magical sandwich that regenerated itself each day as long as you didn't eat the crust. It didn't offer any benefit when you ate it, it was just an infinite sandwich. That sandwich became a character in and of itself. The amount of time that was spent talking about the sandwich, its contents, the flavor, etc. was crazy.
Every player described how their character would ogle the sandwich whenever it was brought out. That character is gone now, but she kept that sandwich right up until retirement. She spends her time in Candlekeep Library, devouring knowledge and also the sandwich. Wait, as long as you don't eat the crust, what if you cut it in half and separate the two halves? Would each half generate a whole sandwich as long as there were no bites taken out of it? It's the deep philosophical questions like this that keep me coming back to Reddit. Yeah, there are any number of minor items in D&D that are capable of changing the course of human or humanoid development when you think about their broader implications, if they were used to their best effect instead of just by a random bunch of idiot heroes. Fun stuff. Ring of fire detection. Range, touch. I had a merchant selling some knickknacks, and one of them was a ring of fire identification. If you pointed it at something, it would declare in a loud, clear voice, "Fire," or "Not fire." Obviously useful when facing illusory flames, but for some reason the party didn't spring for it. A fire distinguisher? A rope that couldn't be tied, not even for a second. They were facing a dragon who loved puzzles and eating non-dragons. They gave him the rope and made the deal that if the dragon couldn't make a knot within an hour, then the dragon would need to let them pass through. Our party's DM gave us a magical, mysterious bag. When we opened it, we pulled out a turtle. We reach in again, thinking there must be something else to this bag. We pull out a rabbit. Still thinking that there must be something else, something more meaningful to this item, we reach in again and pull out a 9-foot-tall deer. It really was just a backpack that lets you pull out random animals. My bard proceeds to use Speak with Animals, then charms the deer to let us ride him. We named him Preston, and he's been our ridiculously massive means of transportation ever since. The Rod of Irony was a fishing rod that you could only find by fishing it up. Using it only fished up more rods of irony, we used them for firewood. I'd become a fishing rod salesman. They found a wand that creates a random and unique lock that incorporates itself into the substance it's used on, so it might make a suspicious recess in a stone wall or a brass-plated keyhole on a wooden door. If probed with lockpicks, you would encounter moving tumblers or some other appropriate but unique locking mechanism. It didn't magically create a compartment, it just made a lock. Even if you used it on a desk drawer, it never made a latch or bolt. So the drawer would open perfectly fine while having a useless metal cylinder with tumblers that weren't connected to anything. If you successfully picked the lock, it always felt like a real lock despite lacking the physical pieces, it would make a soft chiming noise and the lock would evaporate. The wand was a training tool used by a famous locksmith to challenge himself and his students. It had no practical application at all outside of that profession. It ended up being used by the druid, who had ranks in magical device, don't ask, to constantly mess with the rogue. The druid would take every opportunity to wild shape into a small critter good for scouting, and then place fake locks anywhere the rogue might conceivably try to use the search skill. The rogue's increasing paranoia whenever he found a lock, and his overblown promises of vengeance every time a random hole in a floorboard wasted a minute of his time and chimed at him, was a pretty good gag. It turned a little sour when the druid made an extra lock on an honest-to-goodness treasure chest. The rogue rolled a natural 20 to pick the first lock and got a chiming noise. Then he rolled a 3 and triggered an energy-draining trap that permanently lost him 5 HP. After that, the rogue stole every wand the druid had in the middle of the night and threw them all into a bottomless pit in the Underdark. I had a magical rod of rubber duck. Gave it to the party as a joke item because they kept asking for weird crap. Not one of them chose to identify it. It was an artifact-level rubber duck. Once it was part of your inventory, it would never leave it unless it wanted to. It had wisdom and intelligence of 28, sentience, and it could be attuned. It was actually a great old one that could grant anyone a wish spell with 100% accuracy at the cost of 2 of the caster's levels. Nobody learned that it was probably the most powerful item in the game. And what is the function of a rubber duck? In the first campaign I played, the party began their journey by finding an orc woman in a tavern whose baby was stolen, and what she found in its place was a knife with a weird symbol on the handle. She sent us with the knife in search of the baby. We spent hours and hours and session after session never using the knife in combat. We then found out that the knife would turn anyone it cut into a lizard. My character ate peanut butter off that knife more than once before finding this out. It may just be me, but that item sounds far from useless.
Facing a beholder? Slice? Now you're a gecko. Unstoppable vampire lord? Nope, it's a chameleon now. There's a reason polymorph is a popular spell for getting rid of powerful enemies while you wipe up their minions. My party has been carrying around a wand of disguised self they found in a magic store bargain bin for over a year and haven't used it yet. Except that's not actually what it is, hence why it was in the bargain bin. It's actually a wand of this guy's elf, which once a day can summon an incorporeal elven servant to carry out a simple task for you. I was so happy with myself for coming up with that one, and so sad they never even tried to use it, so the pun goes unheard forever. My infamous Horn of Resounding Quacks was a hit, summoned any duck within a half-mile radius of the person using it. The party never went hungry after that. For clarification, it was indeed to call any and all ducks within the half-mile radius, but it wasn't a matter of instant teleportation. The ducks have to travel, but do so willingly, answering the call of the horn. Poor ducks. If you're an evil DM, you can get them used to it, so they never bring food anymore, and then they put them in a duckless place. Have fun starving, boys. Depends on how you read it. Summon as in any duck within a half-mile is summoned to you, there need to be ducks, or summon. Within a half-mile radius around you, a duck is randomly summoned. If there were no ducks before, there is one now. It might be out of your sight, quacking, or standing behind some rocks a quarter-mile away, but it's there nonetheless. Congratulations! The ethereal plane, the seventh layer of hell, and the deadly ruins of the great archwizard Asgordon are now infested with ducks, because your gosh damn bard kept blowing the horn every 3 seconds. I could see this. Some evil demigod lording over his demon minions, sneering as fire and smoke swirl around him, and then a duck appears on his lap. Then another on top of his throne. Suddenly, there's a dozen ducks all quacking about. Then hundreds. This is actually an incredibly powerful magic horn. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I gave my players an alchemy jug. They had it for most of the campaign, and mostly forgot about it apart from the odd joke, but when building to the end, they used it to torture my main villain. They'd captured him. To find out what it was and how to stop him, they used the jug to pour mayonnaise down his throat until he agreed to talk. That gave them advantage on the intimidation check they had to carry out, which they succeeded on. So mayonnaise is an instrument of torture. In my 3rd edition early days, my friend's older brother was DMing a game for my friends, my sister, and me. One of the items we got rolled on the random table was a gust of wind fan. It's exactly what it sounds like. Wave it, creates a powerful enough gust of wind to propel a boat and possibly rips itself to tatters. Threw it in the pack and forgot about it. A few sessions later, we're defending a town from waves of invaders. The final boss is a Cyclops or an Etin or something. Big bruiser, we see it approaching, with enough time to prepare for its arrival. My sister asks us to use all of our healing potions and then give her the glass vials, which we do. Then she turns to the DM and calmly explains how she takes the vials with her up a guard tower. She smashes and grinds them up, waits for an opportune time, then uses the fan to blow a gust of powdered glass particles into the Etin's eyes. The look on this man's face, a cross between, "Holy crap, that's awesome. I'm so happy a story like this is in my campaign world now," and "Frick, this boss was supposed to be difficult." In a game I'm currently in, our DM gave us a flask of endless water. It can produce water in a trickle, a flood, or a deluge that shoots 30 gallons of water in one turn. Our cleric has just fallen from a bridge over a chasm, and through clever bullcrapping, our sorcerer has managed to catch the falling cleric with a web spell. As we're all racking our brains to figure out a way to save them, our cleric pulls out the flask and uses the water cannon mode to propel herself back onto the bridge, using the web strands as a fulcrum. This sounds like what happens when you play D&D with engineers. I'm not sure me or any of my players would have ever thought about using it in that capacity. More water-based shenanigans follow. I had to literally ban the 3.5 spell Create Water because my entire party rolled classes that could learn it. The default is Cleric or Druid, but there's books that award it to Arcane casters as well, and solved everything with the stupid cantrip. It would blow your mind how many puzzles, traps, combat encounters, and social situations can be solved by liberal application of magic water. Someone refuses to talk, waterboard them. Pressure plates might be down this hallway, set them off from distance with a flood. there's a locked anything. Break it by dropping water from a height. Ambushed, turn the road to mud and run away. Setting an ambush, turn the road to mud and wait. Starving, you can survive for 10 days on just water. Need to escape from a conversation, a pipe bursts, and the building floods. The list goes on. Turns out physicists and engineers can turn a cantrip into the power equivalent of a 9th level spell, given enough thought.
I have an idea for my next character now.
Your party and DM do have to be on board for this to work. We would literally spend half of a 6-hour session doing math and digging through the books in order to make this kind of thing happen. We found it fun. Most tables likely would not find it fun. We ended up with Excel sheets for things like newtons of force in terms of D, X, and air expenditure by race in terms of volume per hour, accounting for increased and decreased size categories. They did all of this to justify plans like shrinking themselves down, jumping in an extra-dimensional hole with fixed dimensions, and mailing themselves into a building. Yes, there was an easier way. No, it wasn't as much fun. The ban was fairly well agreed on eventually. The cantrip shenanigans were amusing for a few weeks, but they ultimately got tired of already having the solution to every encounter, and we agreed to limit its use out of combat, non-encounter scenarios. You want to create a slip and slide to navigate a wizard's tower? No. Once my party got a huge, beautiful magic sword which was improperly identified as a sword of ogre slaying. Instead, it was a cursed sword of ogre saying. Whoever wielded it would only be able to yell, "Ogre!" at things. Several adventures later, they were attempting to catch a thief who was evading them. They came up with the brilliant idea of setting the sword as bait and just going about their business. Sure enough, sometime later they heard, "Ogre! Ogre! Ogre!" ring out through the town, and they caught him without consequence. Reminds me of the Ring of Hunan influence from volume 3 or 4 of the Encyclopedia Magica from 2nd edition AD&D. Whenever attempted to be used, it caused a painful burning sensation in the user's mouth that could only be removed by consuming 1d4 plates of rice. The Ring of Hunan influence. This jade ring is decorated with oriental characters including Fu Manchu and Charlie Chan. It affects all food eaten by the wearer. There is no noticeable change in taste, but 1 round after being eaten, the food begins to burn for 1d4 HP damage per round. Water only makes the burning worse. Plus 1 HP to the damage for 1 round. Only eating 1d6 plates of rice will ease the pain. However, no matter how much food is consumed, the wearer still feels hungry an hour later.
For anyone who doesn't know, Hunan is a Chinese province known for their hot and spicy food, which I assume this is a reference to.
Not while I was DMing, but my favorite useless magic items to this day are the Boots of Quickstep. Once per turn, you may click your heels as an action, to gain an action. It resulted in my character beginning each of his turn clicking his heels. It was marvelous. Once had my party find a magic spoon. It emitted a terrible aura of dark illusion magic, and merely holding it filled players with a sense of dread from its sheer chaotic energy. Its in-game abilities? It worked like a fork instead of a spoon.
The arcane spork of +5 anxiety?
Let it be known that the narrator is cackling maniacally and writing down magic item ideas while writing this script. A modified version of the 5e wind fan that only works once a day and immediately looks tattered after use, so you can never use it multiple times, but it only works once every 24 hours. Now, it sounds like a not bad magical item, but the only times it's ever been used is to show people what it does. So an NPC says, "Hey, what's this fan do?" The player grins, "I'll show you." Useless gust of wind noises. It happened 5 times and then it got sold off to the underground scrapper they were working for. Was playing a campaign on a tropical island type of place and an enemy knocked my weapon off a cliff, so I used a coconut as an improvised weapon, crit with that thing 4 times in a row, and decided to keep it for getting the final blow on people. Was a barbarian and the DM liked that the coconut was killing things so much he had me keep track of the kills, and eventually I had a 3+ coconut that on a crit would ricochet until it didn't kill something. So basically he gave me a coconut of great potential. A few odds and ends, a can of dehydrated water, just an empty can, a wand of kindling, just a stick to burn, a scroll of raise dead that makes a dead body float 6 inches off the ground, a ring of invisibility that turns only the ring invisible on use. One of my one-shot campaigns had all players at 8th level, so I wanted to give them magical items, but not anything too OP. So one of my monk players wanted a decanter of endless water, so I changed it to a homebrew version where it didn't do the stream, fountain or geyser things, but instead it would pour endless alcoholic beverages.
He could make the decanter fill with mojitos, or margaritas, or a Heineken, whatever, but only to get drunk. I thought it was harmless and fine, until I realized he'd selected the way of the drunken master and got drunk on command anywhere and everywhere. It was quite fun. I'm writing a new one-shot, and I might take some ideas from this post too. A DM once gave our party a mortar and pestle that let us grind out spices in fairly large quantities. We were supposed to use it as a hook to get involved with an army. It would have let the cooks keep the soldiers happy and put us in good graces of a local lord. Instead, we wound up completely abandoning that questline, setting up a spice shop, and went into business. It was supposed to be a one-off adventure, but we had a great DM and it turned into the best long-term campaign I've ever played in. It had a court intrigue, assassination attempts, war, curses, everything you could want. It ended when we all went our separate ways at the end of high school, with one of the business partners, Human, dying of old age, another, Elvin, selling his shares of the business to the dead one's heirs to retire, and my gnome faking his own death and leaving town to avoid a jealous husband, literally riding off into the sunset on a flying merchant ship. Man, you know how much spices cost once upon a time? More than their weight in gold. Saffron is still worth more than its weight in gold now. A quill of penmanship and literacy allowed any creature to write their thoughts down in perfectly legible common. A rogue in the party was obsessed with capturing different creatures and monsters to learn their thoughts, only to find that most animals just wrote onomatopoeia versions of normal animal sounds, like roar or quack. The party was sick of it and in a later adventure agreed to trade off the quill to a half-orc bodyguard in exchange for information to ambush one of the campaign's villains. The half-orc would become a Thomas Paine-like thought leader, and his first 2 books were dedicated to the party. I got a corncob pipe that made bubbles. Seriously, that's just it. Just bubbles. They didn't put people to sleep, they didn't explode under flames, nothing. Maybe it would make someone's eyes burn if they rubbed it in. We were assaulting a town and I was part of the crew taking the gatehouse. We barred the windows and doors and I put the pipe under the edge of the door and blew it like I was inflating my own life raft in the ocean. Soon, bubbles were pouring out at the seams and the guards inside were panicking hardcore. One of them tripped on something and hurt himself on his own weapon. Once we opened the door, they came stumbling out and we cut them down while they were disoriented and distracted. Shortly thereafter, I traded the stupid pipe for various types of arrows at a Fletcher. I had that damn pipe for a long time and only used it once. We were playing through a pre-made campaign. At one point, the players retrieved a magical artifact, which turned out to be an orb of control dragons. It does exactly what you'd expect. In theory, it could have been very useful, except no dragons were showing up in the campaign, so it was basically useless. It did, however, lead to a running gag where our most paranoid player kept attempting to control dragon random NPCs to see if they were secretly dragons in disguise. Belt of teleportation that only transported the belt and the pants of the wearer to an unoccupied location within 60 feet of the user. I put it in as a gag, but the players started using it to startle opponents by teleporting pants just above them. The shenanigans increased when they discovered the belt also teleported whatever was in the pants' pockets. My groups have a tradition of gifting players useless magic items with a birthday theme on their in-real-life birthday. 2 of the favorites that I bestowed so far include a pair of boots that dropped streamers everywhere he walked and a ring that turned the wearer's poop into chocolate cake, which could be eaten to regain 1 hit point. Why did you name this ring of healing poop cake? The Chocolate Fudge Maker. My DM gave my character a glove that when the word bravo is said, emits the sound of applause. My friend's character used it intentionally to blow our cover infiltrating an enemy stronghold because he wanted to fight something. Our GM gave us an item which was the head of an ancient goblin king. This severed head had the power to give good advice to us, but it was completely unrelated to the question. What should we do to kill the dragon? Remember to wash your hands after using the bathroom. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.